Auntie Grace, why are you still standing there? I am sorry, madam. I just finished cleaning the downstairs. Then clean it again. Again, madam. My hands are already hurting. Your hands? Do you think I hired you to complain? No, madam. Please, I only need a few minutes to rest. Rest? People like you should be grateful to even have a job in this house. I am grateful, madam. Then prove it. Go upstairs and wash all the curtains. Madam, they are very heavy. I may not be able to carry them alone. Then drag them. Please, madam, I am an old woman. And whose problem is that? One day, you will understand what it means to grow old. Don't give me advice. You are nothing but a cleaner in this house. Yes, madam. You clean my floors, wash my clothes, and obey me. Never forget your place. I won't. Good. Now get on your knees and clean that floor again. Yes, madam. And don't expect anyone to feel sorry for you. I only pray that one day you will learn to respect people before it is too late.
Madam Beatrice Williams was a respected and wealthy widow in her early 60s. She lived in a large and beautiful mansion in a quiet part of the city, but she did not allow her wealth to make her proud. Many years earlier, she and her late husband, Chief Edward Williams, had started their construction company from a small rented office. In those early days, they did not have many workers, expensive cars, or powerful friends. They worked from morning until night, saved every amount of money they earned, and accepted small building jobs that other companies did not want. Madam Beatrice handled the accounts while her husband supervised the workers at different construction sites. There were times when they struggled to pay their employees, but they never refused to pay anyone who worked for them. Chief Edward often reminded his wife that a successful company could only grow when its workers were treated with respect. Madam Beatrice believed the same thing, and together they slowly built the company into one of the largest construction companies in the country. They built houses, offices, hotels, schools, and hospitals. Their name became known among wealthy business owners and government officials. By the time Chief Edward died after a brief illness, the company was worth a great amount of money. His death broke Madam Beatrice's heart because he had been her husband, closest friend, and business partner for many years. For several months, she found it difficult to enter his office or look at his empty chair during company meetings. Some people expected the business to collapse after his death, while others tried to take advantage of her grief. A few senior managers believed that a widow in her 60s would not be strong enough to control such a large company. Some even tried to hide money and change important records. Madam Beatrice discovered their plans and dismissed them. She worked harder than before, attended every important meeting, and carefully studied every document brought to her. She refused to allow the company her husband had suffered to build to fall into dishonest hands. Her only son, Adrian Williams, stood beside her during that difficult period. Adrian was 33 years old, tall, handsome, intelligent, and hardworking. He had studied business management and engineering at good schools, but he never depended only on his certificates. Before his father's death, he had spent years visiting construction sites, learning from workers, and understanding how every part of the family business operated. He was not afraid of dust, noise, or hard work. He sometimes removed his expensive suit, wore a safety helmet, and walked around building sites to speak with engineers, drivers, cleaners, and laborers. When Adrian became the head of the company, he did not only continue what his father had started. He expanded the business into real estate, luxury hotels, and technology. He bought old buildings, renovated them, and turned them into modern apartments. He opened hotels in different cities and invested in technology companies that helped people find homes and manage properties. Within a few years, newspapers and business magazines began to describe Adrian as one of the youngest billionaires in the country. His pictures appeared online, and many people wanted to meet him. Wealthy families invited him to private events because they hoped he would marry one of their daughters. Beautiful women tried to attract his attention whenever he entered a restaurant, business meeting, or charity program. However, Adrian remained calm and humble. He did not believe that his money made him better than other people. He greeted his drivers, thanked waiters, and listened when junior workers spoke to him. Whenever a cleaner mistakenly entered his office while he was working, he did not shout. He would smile and allow the person to finish cleaning. Madame Beatrice was proud of the man he had become. She had raised him to understand that every human being deserved respect. When Adrian was a child, she often took him to the company's building sites and showed him the workers carrying blocks under the sun. She taught him that the large houses his family owned had been built through the hard work of many people. She also taught him that anyone could lose money, power, or position, but a good character would remain. Adrian listened to his mother and grew into a generous man. He paid his workers well, supported poor students, and donated money to hospitals. He also continued the charity foundation his late father had started. Although Madame Beatrice was pleased with Adrian's success, she worried about his personal life. Adrian had spent most of his adult years working. He had dated a few women, but none of the relationships had lasted. Some women were only interested in his name and money, while others disliked the close relationship he shared with his mother. Madame Beatrice did not want to choose a wife for him, but she hoped he would marry a woman who was honest, patient, and kind. She wanted someone who would love Adrian as a person and not see him as a way to become rich. One Sunday afternoon, Adrian visited his mother at her mansion. He arrived carrying flowers and a small gift box. Madame Beatrice was seated in the living room reading a business report when she heard his car enter the compound. She smiled when he walked inside. "My busy son has finally remembered that he has a mother," she said playfully. Adrian laughed and bent down to hug her. "I can never forget you, mother. Work has just been difficult this week." He gave her the flowers and placed the gift box on her lap. "What is inside this one?" she asked. "Open it," he replied. Madame Beatrice opened the box and found a beautiful wristwatch. She thanked him, but she noticed that Adrian looked unusually excited. He kept smiling and checking his phone. "Something is different about you today," she said. "You have been smiling since you entered this house. Did your company win another large contract?" Adrian sat beside her and took a deep breath. "It is not about the company." Madame Beatrice placed the box on the table and looked at him carefully. "Then what is it?" Adrian reached into his pocket and brought out his phone. He opened a picture and handed it to her. The picture showed a beautiful young woman wearing an elegant red dress. Her makeup was perfect and her long hair rested smoothly over her shoulders. "Her name is Vanessa Cole," Adrian said. "We have been seeing each other for almost 1 year." Madame Beatrice raised her eyebrows. "1 year? You have been seeing a woman for 1 year and you are only telling me now?" "I wanted to be sure before I brought her into the family," Adrian explained. "I did not want to introduce every woman I met to you." Madame Beatrice looked at the picture again. Vanessa was certainly beautiful. "What does she do?" she asked. "She owns a small fashion business and she also helps her father with some of his investments," Adrian answered. "She is intelligent, confident, and supportive. She understands how demanding my work can be." Madame Beatrice nodded slowly. "Do you love her?" Adrian smiled. "Yes, mother, I love her." His answer was quick and firm. Madame Beatrice returned the phone to him. "Then I would like to meet her." Adrian's smile widened. "That is why I came. I want to bring her for dinner next weekend." "Bring her," Madame Beatrice said. "I will welcome her." During the following week, Adrian called his mother several times to speak about Vanessa. He described how they had met at a business event and how Vanessa had supported him during a difficult company project. He spoke about her beauty, intelligence, and good taste. Madame Beatrice listened without saying anything negative. She did not want to judge a woman she had not met. On the evening of the dinner, Madame Beatrice instructed the cooks to prepare several dishes. She also warned the domestic workers not to behave differently simply because Adrian was bringing an important guest. Treat her with respect, but do not become frightened. She is a human being like everyone else. Adrian arrived shortly after 7 o'clock with Vanessa. Vanessa stepped out of his car wearing an expensive cream-colored gown and shining jewelry. She carried a designer handbag and walked with confidence. The moment she saw Madame Beatrice waiting at the entrance, she smiled warmly and moved forward. "Madame Beatrice, it is such an honor to finally meet you," she said. She held out a beautifully wrapped gift. "Adrian has told me so many wonderful things about you." Madame Beatrice accepted the gift and embraced her lightly. "Welcome, Vanessa. I have also heard a lot about you." Vanessa looked around the mansion with great interest, but she quickly turned her attention back to Madame Beatrice when she realized the older woman was watching her. "Your home is beautiful, but I am not surprised. Adrian told me you have excellent taste." During dinner, Vanessa behaved perfectly. She spoke politely, laughed softly, and praised every meal placed before her. When a maid served her water, Vanessa smiled and thanked her. She asked Madame Beatrice about the history of the family company and acted deeply interested in the answer. She also spoke about helping poor children through her fashion business. "I believe successful people should always remember those who are struggling. Money is nothing if it cannot be used to help others." Madame Beatrice watched her carefully. The words sounded good, but something about the way Vanessa spoke felt too prepared. It seemed as if she had studied the kind of woman Adrian's mother would like and had decided to play that role. Still, Madame Beatrice did not allow her feelings to control her. She remained friendly throughout the evening. After Vanessa left, Adrian stayed behind for a few minutes. "What do you think about her?" he asked eagerly. Madame Beatrice smiled. "She is beautiful and well-spoken." "Only that?" Adrian asked. "You met her for only a few hours," Madame Beatrice replied. "It would be unfair to make a final decision so quickly." Adrian nodded, though he looked slightly disappointed. "You will like her when you know her better." "Perhaps I will," Madame Beatrice said. Vanessa continued visiting over the next few months. Each time she came, she brought gifts for Madame Beatrice and spoke kindly to the workers. She remembered important dates and sent flowers when Madame Beatrice attended a company event. She often joined Adrian in charity programs and allowed photographers to take pictures of her giving food or clothes to poor families. Everyone around Adrian began to praise her. Some of his friends described her as the perfect woman for him. Vanessa knew how to dress, how to speak, and how to behave in front of important people. Adrian became more deeply in love with her. One evening, he took Vanessa to a private restaurant and asked her to marry him. She accepted, and their engagement became public the following day. News websites shared pictures of Vanessa wearing a large diamond ring. Social media was filled with messages congratulating them. Madame Beatrice also congratulated them, but the uneasy feeling inside her did not disappear. She noticed small things that other people ignored. Whenever Vanessa spoke to powerful people, her smile remained wide and her voice stayed sweet. But when a worker interrupted her, even by mistake, her eyes became cold. Sometimes the change lasted only a second. Then she quickly returned to her pleasant behavior. One visit to Madame Beatrice's mansion, Vanessa entered the kitchen to ask for a drink. She did not know Madame Beatrice was standing in the hallway nearby. A young maid opened the refrigerator and asked which juice she wanted. "Must I explain everything to you?" she said sharply. "Bring the orange juice and make sure the glass is clean." "I cannot drink from the kind of dirty cups you people use." The maid apologized and quickly prepared the drink. As Vanessa turned to leave the kitchen, she saw Madame Beatrice in the hallway. Her face changed at once. "I was only telling her that I prefer a clean glass because my stomach is very sensitive," she explained with a smile. Madame Beatrice nodded without arguing, but she remembered the harsh tone Vanessa had used. Another time, Madame Beatrice saw Vanessa refuse to enter a car because the driver had not cleaned a small mark from the door. Vanessa stood outside and complained until the embarrassed man brought a cloth and wiped it away. The moment Adrian appeared, she laughed and claimed she had been joking with the driver. These small incidents increased Madame Beatrice's doubts, but she had no strong proof that Vanessa was truly a bad person. She knew that if she accused Vanessa without evidence, Adrian might believe she simply did not want him to marry. Madame Beatrice did not want to lose her son's trust. She therefore remained quiet and continued watching. The truth became clearer during a large charity event organized by the Williams Foundation. The event was held in a beautiful hall and attended by business owners, doctors, government officials, and wealthy donors. Its purpose was to raise money for children who needed medical treatment. Madame Beatrice wore a long blue dress and welcomed the guests at the entrance. Adrian moved around the hall speaking to donors while Vanessa stood near the front wearing a fitted silver gown. She smiled for photographs and spoke about the importance of helping sick children. Many people admired her beauty and confidence. During the event, a young waiter named Samuel carried a tray of water through the crowded hall. Samuel was new to the job and looked nervous. As he passed Vanessa, another guest stepped backwards and touched his arm. The tray shook and a small amount of water spilled near the bottom of Vanessa's gown. The water did not damage the dress, but Vanessa looked down and became furious. She glanced around first to make sure Adrian was not close. "Are you blind?" she asked Samuel in a low but angry voice. Samuel immediately lowered his head. "I am very sorry, madam. Someone touched my arm. I did not mean to spill it." "Do you know how much this dress costs? Your salary for 1 year cannot buy it." "I am sorry," Samuel repeated. "I will clean the floor immediately." Vanessa stepped closer to him. "People like you are always careless. You cannot do one simple job properly." Samuel's hands began to shake. A few guests turned to look at them. "Please forgive me, madam. I need this job." Vanessa called one of the supervisors. "This waiter should be sent away," she said. "I do not want him serving anyone here again. If he can spill water on me, he can pour hot food on an important guest." The supervisor looked uncomfortable. "Madam, it was an accident. He's still learning." "I do not care," Vanessa replied. "Dismiss him now." Madame Beatrice had been standing several meters away behind a flower decoration. She saw and heard everything. She watched Samuel's face fail with fear. The young man looked as though he might cry. "Please, madam," Samuel said. "My mother is sick and I am the one paying for her medicine. I cannot lose this job." Vanessa showed no concern. "That is not my problem. You should have thought about your sick mother before behaving carelessly." At that moment, Adrian walked towards them. He had not heard the conversation. The instant Vanessa saw him, her face softened. She quickly bent down and helped Samuel pick up a napkin that had fallen from the tray. "Do not worry," she said sweetly. "It was only an accident." Samuel stared at her in shock. Adrian smiled when he saw Vanessa helping him. "Is everything all right?" he asked. Vanessa stood and touched his arm. "Everything is fine. Samuel accidentally spilled a little water, but I told him not to worry. Anyone can make a mistake." Adrian looked at Samuel. "Be careful next time." "Yes, sir," Samuel answered quietly. Vanessa then turned to the supervisor. "Please, do not punish him. He did not mean it." The supervisor nodded, but he looked confused. Adrian placed his hand gently around Vanessa's waist. "This is one of the reasons I love you," he said. "You always understand people." Vanessa smiled proudly. Madame Beatrice felt a deep pain inside her chest as she watched them walk away. She was not only worried about Vanessa's cruelty, she was frightened by how easily the young woman could change her behavior and deceive Adrian. Later that evening, after most of the guests had left, Madame Beatrice found Samuel near the back of the hall. He was cleaning tables with another waiter. "Come with me for a moment," she said. Samuel followed her into a quiet room. He looked worried because he thought he might be in trouble. Madame Beatrice closed the door gently. "I saw what happened," she said. Samuel lowered his eyes. "I am sorry, madam. It was an accident." "I know it was an accident. I also heard what Miss Vanessa said to you before Adrian arrived." Samuel looked up quickly. "Please, madam, I do not want any trouble. I need this work." "You will not lose your job," Madame Beatrice assured him. "Did she speak to you that way before today?" Samuel hesitated. She has shouted at some of the workers before, but she's usually kind when Mr. Adrian is near. Madame Beatrice's heart became heavier. Go back to your work. No one will dismiss you. Samuel thanked her repeatedly before leaving. That night, Madame Beatrice could not sleep. She walked around her bedroom thinking about everything she had witnessed. She imagined Vanessa entering the family after the wedding and gaining control of the mansion, the workers, and perhaps even part of the company. She wondered how Vanessa would treat Adrian when she no longer needed to impress him. The following morning, Madame Beatrice asked Adrian to visit her. He arrived after work still wearing his suit. She offered him food, but he noticed that she looked troubled. "Mother, what is wrong?" he asked. Madame Beatrice sat across from him. "I need to tell you something about Vanessa." Adrian's expression changed slightly. "What happened?" "At the charity event, the young waiter spilled water near her dress," Madame Beatrice began. "Before you came, Vanessa insulted him. She called him careless, spoke badly about poor people, and demanded that he should be dismissed. She refused to listen even when he explained that his mother was sick. The moment she saw you, she changed and acted as if she had forgiven him from the beginning." Adrian remained silent for a few seconds. "Are you sure you heard everything correctly?" he asked. "I was close enough to hear every word," Madame Beatrice replied. "I also spoke to the waiter afterwards." Adrian leaned back in his chair. He looked uncomfortable. "Vanessa told me the waiter was frightened because he thought the supervisor would punish him. She said she was trying to calm him." "That is not what happened," Madame Beatrice said firmly. "She wanted him dismissed." Adrian rubbed his forehead. "Mother, perhaps she became angry for a moment. The dress was expensive and she was under pressure because of the event." "Being angry does not give anyone the right to insult a poor young man," Madame Beatrice replied. "What worries me most is not only what she said, it is the way she changed when she saw you." Adrian stood and walked towards the window. "You have never truly accepted her," he said quietly. Madame Beatrice felt hurt. "That is not true. I have welcomed her into my home and treated her with respect. You are always watching her. Every small mistake becomes a serious problem." "I am watching because you are my only son, and marriage is not a small decision. I do not want you to marry someone who pretends to be kind." Adrian turned to face her. "Vanessa is not pretending." "Then why does her behavior change when you enter a room?" Madame Beatrice asked. Adrian did not answer immediately. "I love her," Adrian finally said. "I have spent almost 1 year with her. I know her better than one waiter does." "Love can make a person ignore things that are clear to others," Madame Beatrice said gently. "I am not asking you to end the engagement today. I am asking you to open your eyes." Adrian looked disappointed. "I expected you to be happy for me." "I want you to be happy," Madame Beatrice replied. "That is why I am speaking." Adrian picked up his car keys from the table. "I will talk to Vanessa." After leaving his mother's house, Adrian drove directly to Vanessa's apartment. Vanessa welcomed him with a hug, but she quickly noticed that he was not smiling. "What is wrong?" she asked. Adrian sat on the sofa. "My mother told me what happened with the waiter at the charity event." Vanessa became still for a moment, but she recovered quickly. "What did she tell you?" "She said you insulted him and wanted him dismissed before I arrived." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears almost immediately. "I cannot believe this," she said. "I knew your mother did not like me, but I never thought she would lie about me." Adrian frowned. "She said she heard everything." Vanessa sat beside him and covered her face with her hands. "The waiter nearly poured water all over me, and I only told him to be more careful. He became frightened because the supervisor was angry with him. I was the one who begged them not to dismiss him." "My mother said you called him careless and spoke badly about poor people." Vanessa began to cry. "Adrian, do you really believe I would say such things? Have I not attended charity events with you? Have I not donated clothes and money to people?" Adrian's anger slowly disappeared as he watched her cry. Vanessa took his hand. "Your mother has never accepted me because my family is not as powerful as yours. She thinks I am not good enough to become a Williams. Everything I do is wrong in her eyes." "My mother is not like that," Adrian said. "She does not judge people because of money." "Then why does she keep looking for faults in me?" Vanessa asked. "I have tried to please her. I bring her gifts, visit her, and speak to her with respect, but she still believes the worst about me." Adrian sighed. "I do not want problems between both of you." Vanessa rested her head against his shoulder. "I love you, Adrian. I do not want to come between you and your mother. I only want her to give me a chance." Later that evening, Adrian called Madame Beatrice. His voice was calm but firm. "Mother, I spoke to Vanessa," he said. She explained that the waiter misunderstood her. She said she only corrected him and later asked the supervisor not to dismiss him. Madame Beatrice closed her eyes in disappointment. "I saw what happened with my own eyes." "I am not saying you are lying," Adrian replied. "Perhaps you heard only part of the conversation." "Adrian, I heard everything," she insisted. "Vanessa is deeply hurt," Adrian continued. "She believes you dislike her because she does not come from an old, respected family." "That is not true," Madame Beatrice said. "I started with nothing. I would never reject someone because her family is not wealthy." "Then please give her a chance," Adrian begged. "Nobody is perfect. She may have become angry for a moment, but that does not make her a terrible person. The wedding is approaching, and I do not want the two women I love most fighting each other." Madame Beatrice became quiet. She knew that continuing to argue would only push Adrian closer to Vanessa and make her believe his mother wanted to control his life. "Very well," she said at last. "I will give her another chance." "Thank you, Mother," Adrian replied with relief. After the call ended, Madame Beatrice sat alone for a long time. She knew that Vanessa had successfully turned the situation around and made herself appear like the victim. Madame Beatrice also understood that warnings would no longer be enough. She needed clear proof that Adrian could not ignore. She did not want to destroy her son's happiness, but she also could not stand quietly while he married a dishonest woman. For the next few weeks, she behaved as if she had accepted Vanessa. She attended wedding planning meetings, smiled during family dinners, and even helped Vanessa choose decorations. Vanessa became more relaxed because she believed she had defeated the older woman's suspicion. She often held Adrian's hand in front of Madame Beatrice and spoke sweetly about becoming part of the family. One afternoon, Adrian informed them that he had to travel abroad for an important business deal. A group of foreign investors wanted to partner with the company on a large hotel project, and the negotiations could take several weeks. Vanessa was already living in one of Adrian's mansions because she was supervising the wedding arrangements and helping interior decorators prepare the house where they would live after marriage. "I do not like leaving at this time," Adrian told them during dinner. "The wedding is close and there's still a lot to arrange." Vanessa smiled and touched his hand. "Do not worry, I will handle everything here. Your business is important." Adrian looked at his mother. "Please check on her while I'm away." Madame Beatrice nodded. "I will." At that moment, an idea began to form in her mind. Adrian's absence would give her the opportunity she needed. Vanessa would no longer have to pretend every hour of the day. Madame Beatrice wanted to see how she behaved inside the mansion when Adrian was far away. 2 days before Adrian's journey, Madame Beatrice told him that she also planned to travel. "My sister has been asking me to visit her," she explained. "I have decided to spend a few weeks with her." Adrian was pleased. "That will be good for you. You have been working too hard." Vanessa also smiled. "You deserve the rest, Madame Beatrice." Madame Beatrice returned the smile, though she noticed the relief in Vanessa's eyes. Vanessa was clearly happy that both Adrian and his mother would be away. The day after Adrian traveled, Madame Beatrice called Mr. Collins, one of the oldest and most trusted employees in the family company. Mr. Collins had worked with her late husband for many years and had remained loyal to the family. She asked him to come to her private home without telling anyone. When he arrived, she explained her plan. Mr. Collins stared at her in surprise. "Madam, you want to enter your son's mansion as a maid?" he asked. "Yes," Madame Beatrice answered. "I need to see Vanessa's true character with my own eyes." "But what if she recognizes you?" "She will not," Madame Beatrice said. "Vanessa has never spent much time looking at people she believes are beneath her. With the right clothes and makeup, she will see only an old, poor woman." Mr. Collins was still worried. "This may be dangerous. Mrs. Helen will be there," Madame Beatrice explained. "She is the head housekeeper and she will know the truth. No one else must know." Mr. Collins finally agreed to help her. He contacted a trusted makeup artist who had worked on films and stage plays. The woman arrived secretly at Madame Beatrice's home the following morning. Madame Beatrice removed her diamond earrings, gold necklace and expensive wristwatch. She took off her elegant wig and replaced it with a simple one that looked old and rough. The makeup artist added light lines to her face. darkened some parts of her skin, and created small marks that made her look tired from years of hardship. Madame Beatrice wore a large plain brown gown that was slightly too large for her body, old flat sandals, and a dull headscarf. She bent her shoulders and practiced walking slowly. When Mr. Collins saw her, he stood silently for several seconds. "You look like a completely different person," he said. Madame Beatrice looked at herself in the mirror. For the first time in many years, there was no expensive clothing, jewelry, or carefully styled hair around her. She looked like a struggling widow who had spent her life working for other people. "My name will be Grace," she said. "Auntie Grace," Mr. Collins added. "It sounds natural." Madame Beatrice practiced speaking in a quieter and less confident voice. She also removed the strong perfume she normally used. Instead of carrying her designer handbag, she packed a few simple clothes into an old cloth bag. Before leaving her mansion, she looked once more at the large photograph of her late husband hanging in the hallway. "I hope I am doing the right thing," she whispered. Mr. Collins drove her close to Adrian's mansion in an ordinary car. Mrs. Helen was already waiting near the staff entrance. She was a 55-year-old woman who had worked for the Williams family for almost 20 years. She respected Madame Beatrice deeply and was nervous about the plan. "Madam, are you certain you want to do this?" she asked. "Vanessa has become difficult since Mr. Adrian traveled." "That is exactly why I must do it," Madame Beatrice replied. "From this moment, do not call me Madam. I am Auntie Grace." Mrs. Helen nodded. "Yes, Auntie Grace." They entered through the back gate. The mansion was large, with shining floors, high ceilings, expensive furniture, and many rooms. Madame Beatrice had visited the house several times before, but entering through the workers' side made it feel different. Mrs. Helen led her to a small staff room and told her to wait. She then went to Vanessa, who was seated in the living room looking at wedding decorations on her tablet. "Miss Vanessa, the temporary maid has arrived," Mrs. Helen said. Vanessa did not raise her head. "Which maid?" "The elderly widow I mentioned yesterday. She was recommended by Mr. Collins. She can help until Mary returns from her village." Vanessa sighed. "Bring her." Mrs. Helen returned with Auntie Grace. Madame Beatrice walked slowly into the living room with her old bag held tightly in both hands. Vanessa looked at her for only a few seconds before returning her eyes to the tablet. "What is your name?" she asked. "Grace, madam," Madame Beatrice answered softly. "People call me Auntie Grace." "Have you worked in a large house before?" "Yes, madam. I can clean, wash clothes, and help in the kitchen." Vanessa finally looked at her properly, but there was no sign of recognition in her eyes. She only saw an old woman in faded clothes. "You look weak," she said. "I hope you are not one of those old women who complain about pain every 5 minutes. Madame Beatrice lowered her head. "I will do my best, madam." Vanessa turned to Mrs. Helen. "Make sure she understands that I do not tolerate laziness. I do not want stories about her age. If she cannot walk, send her away." "Yes, Miss Vanessa," Mrs. Helen replied. Vanessa waved her hand. "You can go." As Madame Beatrice followed Mrs. Helen out of the room, she felt a cold pain inside her. Vanessa had not welcomed her, asked about her health, or even offered her a seat. Still, Madame Beatrice reminded herself that the test had only begun. Mrs. Helen showed her the small room she would share with another maid named Ruth. Ruth was a cheerful young woman in her 20s. She greeted Auntie Grace warmly and helped her arrange her clothes. "Do not worry," Ruth said. "The work is plenty, but we help one another." Mrs. Helen quickly gave Ruth a serious look because she did not want anyone becoming suspicious. "Let Auntie Grace rest for only a few minutes," she said. "After that, show her the kitchen and laundry room." Madame Beatrice spent the rest of the day learning the routine of the workers. She cleaned furniture, helped wash dishes, and folded clothes. The other workers treated her kindly. None of them knew that the elderly maid beside them owned part of the mansion and was the mother of their employer. They spoke freely around her. From their conversations, Madame Beatrice learned that Vanessa had already become difficult since Adrian traveled. She complained about food, changed instructions without warning, and blamed workers for small mistakes. "She acts differently when Mr. Adrian is here," Ruth whispered while they folded towels. "When he's around, she calls us by our names and asks if we have eaten. Once he travels, she behaves as if we are animals." Another maid named Clara quickly warned her to lower her voice. "Do you want her to hear you?" she asked. "She threatened to dismiss the gardener yesterday because some dry leaves fell after he cleaned the compound." Madame Beatrice continued folding the towels as if she was not deeply affected by what she heard. That evening, Adrian called Vanessa through video. Vanessa was seated in the living room when her phone rang. She quickly checked her appearance and called the workers. "Everyone should come here," she ordered. Mrs. Helen, Ruth, Clara, and Auntie Grace entered the room. Vanessa answered the call with a bright smile. "My love, how are you?" she asked sweetly. Adrian's face appeared on the screen. "I am fine. How is everything at home?" "Everything is going well," Vanessa replied. She turned the camera towards the workers. "I was just speaking to them about their welfare." Adrian greeted Mrs. Helen and noticed the unfamiliar elderly woman standing behind her. "Who is that?" he asked. Madame Beatrice's heart beat faster, but she kept her face lowered. Vanessa smiled. "That is Auntie Grace, the temporary maid Mrs. Helen employed. She is a poor widow, so I decided to give her a chance." Adrian looked at the screen for a moment, but the glasses, headscarf and makeup hid his mother's face. "Welcome, Auntie Grace," Adrian said. Madame Beatrice spoke softly. "Thank you, sir." Vanessa placed one hand on Auntie Grace's shoulder and smiled at the camera. "She is elderly, so I told everyone not to give her too much work. We must take care of people like her." Madame Beatrice felt Vanessa's fingers pressing against her shoulder as she continued smiling at Adrian. "That is kind of you," Adrian said. "Please make sure she is comfortable." "Of course," Vanessa replied. "You know I cannot allow an elderly woman to suffer." After speaking for a few more minutes, Adrian ended the call. Vanessa's smile disappeared immediately. She removed her hand from Auntie Grace's shoulder as if touching the old woman had irritated her. "Why were you standing like a frightened goat?" she asked. Madame Beatrice lowered her head. "I am sorry, madam." Vanessa turned to all the workers. "The call is over. Stop standing here and return to work." As they began to leave, she called Auntie Grace back. "Wait, the curtains in the guest rooms need to be washed tomorrow." Mrs. Helen looked surprised. "Miss Vanessa, those curtains were washed last week." Vanessa gave her a cold look. "Did I ask when they were washed?" "No, madam." "Then remove them tomorrow and let Auntie Grace wash them by hand." Mrs. Helen tried to remain calm. "They are very heavy. 2 people normally wash them." "She said she could walk," she replied. "Let her prove it." The next morning, Madame Beatrice woke before 5 o'clock. She joined the workers in the kitchen, helped prepare breakfast, and began cleaning the downstairs rooms. Before she could finish, Vanessa entered wearing a beautiful nightrobe. "Why is this floor still wet?" she demanded. "I cleaned it a few minutes ago, madam," Auntie Grace explained. "Then clean it again. I do not want to see marks." Madame Beatrice took the mop and started again. Vanessa watched her for a moment before walking away. After breakfast, Mrs. Helen removed the heavy curtains from 2 guest rooms. She wanted Ruth to help, but Vanessa stopped her. "Auntie Grace will wash them alone," she said. "Ruth has other work." Madame Beatrice carried the curtains to the laundry area. They were large and heavy, and soaking them in water made them even more difficult to lift. She bent over the large basin and began washing them by hand. Her back started hurting, but she did not complain. Ruth came outside and whispered, "Let me help you before she returns." Before Madame Beatrice could answer, Vanessa's voice came from behind them. "What are you doing?" Ruth quickly stood up. "I only wanted to help her turn the curtain." "Did I tell you to help her?" "No, madam." "Then go and clean the upstairs bathroom." Ruth hurried away. Madame Beatrice looked down at Auntie Grace. "If you are too old to work, you should have stayed in your house. Do not come here and expect young people to do your job." Madame Beatrice swallowed her anger. "I will finish it, madam. You must finish all of them before afternoon. After that, scrub the back compound. The gardener did not clean it properly." Madame Beatrice looked at the remaining curtains and then at the wide compound. She knew the work was too much for one elderly woman, but she nodded. "Yes, madam." Vanessa returned inside without another word. The hot sun rose higher as Madame Beatrice continued washing. Her hands became sore and sweat ran down her face. Mrs. Helen watched from the kitchen window with pain in her eyes, but she could not help without destroying the plan. Later, Madame Beatrice carried the wet curtains to the laundry area. Then she picked up a hard brush and started scrubbing the back compound. Vanessa came outside twice to inspect the work. The first time, she complained that the floor was not clean enough. The second time, she poured a bucket of dirty water near a part Madame Beatrice had already scrubbed. "You missed this place," she said. Madame Beatrice knew Vanessa had poured the water deliberately, but she quietly cleaned it again. Over the next several days, the treatment became worse. Vanessa ordered Auntie Grace to wake before every other worker and prepare warm water for her bath. She made her carry heavy bags from the car even when 2 younger workers were available. She ordered her to clean rooms that had already been cleaned and then accused her of moving too slowly. When Auntie Grace sat for a moment to rest her painful back, Vanessa appeared and demanded to know why she was being paid to sleep. "I only sat down for 1 minute, madam," Auntie Grace explained. "Your 1 minute can become 1 hour, Vanessa replied. "Stand up and clean the dining chairs." During every video call with Adrian, Vanessa became a different woman. She gathered the workers, smiled at them, and asked whether they had eaten. Sometimes she gave Auntie Grace a plate of food while Adrian watched on the screen. The moment the call ended, she collected the plates and ordered the elderly woman to finish her duties first. One evening, Adrian asked Auntie Grace how she was being treated. Madame Beatrice looked at Vanessa, who stood behind the phone with a warning expression. "They are treating me well, sir," Auntie Grace answered. Adrian smiled. I am happy to hear that. Vanessa placed her arm around Auntie Grace's shoulders and said, I told you I would take good care of her. After the call, she pushed the old woman's shoulder away. Never speak too much when Adrian calls. He does not need to hear the problems of servants. Madame Beatrice nodded quietly. Inside her heart, sadness and anger continued to grow. She had hoped that her suspicions were wrong. She had hoped Vanessa only had a bad temper that could be corrected. Instead, she was discovering a woman who could lie without fear, pretend without shame, and punish helpless people simply because she believed they had no power. The other workers began to feel sorry for Auntie Grace. They secretly saved food for her and tried to complete some of her tasks when Vanessa was not watching. Each time Vanessa caught them helping, she became angry. Nobody should touch Auntie Grace's work. She came here to earn money, not to receive free help. One afternoon, several shopping bags were brought from Vanessa's car. Some contained shoes, clothes, and heavy boxes of decorations. Vanessa ordered Auntie Grace to carry everything upstairs. Mrs. Helen tried to intervene. Miss Vanessa, some of those boxes are too heavy. Let the security men help her. Vanessa looked at her coldly. Are you now giving orders in this house? No, madam, I am only worried because of her age. Her age did not stop her from coming here to look for work. She will carry them. Madame Beatrice lifted the first box. It was so heavy that her arms shook. She slowly climbed the staircase while Vanessa stood below watching her. Halfway up, Madame Beatrice lost her balance for a moment and held the railing. Ruth moved forward to help, but Vanessa stopped her. Leave her, she said. She must learn to be careful. Madame Beatrice regained her balance and continued climbing. Her back ached, her hands trembled, and tears gathered in her eyes, but she refused to allow them to fall. She reminded herself that she was not suffering only for herself. She was seeing how Vanessa treated every poor person who entered her life. She was also protecting Adrian from a marriage that could destroy his peace and change the future of the entire family. That night, after the other workers had fallen asleep, Madame Beatrice sat on the edge of the small bed and rubbed her painful hands. Ruth noticed the red marks on her palms and brought a small bowl of warm water. Put your hands inside, Ruth said gently. It will reduce the pain. Madame Beatrice looked at the young woman with gratitude. Thank you, my daughter. Ruth sat beside her. I do not understand why Miss Vanessa hates you. You have done nothing wrong. Madame Beatrice forced a tired smile. Some people do not need a reason to treat others badly. Mr. Adrian is a good man, Ruth said. If he knew what was happening, he would not allow it. Madame Beatrice looked down at her hands. Perhaps the truth will reach him one day. Early the next morning, Vanessa shouted Auntie Grace's name from upstairs before sunrise. Madame Beatrice quickly left the room and went to her. Vanessa stood in the hallway with her arms folded. Why did it take you so long to answer me? I came as quickly as I could, madam. My bathroom needs to be cleaned again. There is a small watermark near the mirror. I cleaned it last night, Auntie Grace said gently. Vanessa's eyes became cold. Are you arguing with me? No, madam. Then clean it again. After that, wash the clothes in the laundry room, clean the compound and help in the kitchen. I have visitors coming later and I do not want any mistake. Madame Beatrice entered the bathroom and picked up the cleaning cloth. She looked at herself in the mirror. The old headscarf covered her hair, the large glasses hid her eyes, and the simple gown made her look like a woman who owned nothing. Vanessa had no idea that the maid she treated like dirt was the same woman whose family name, company, and wealth she desperately wanted to enter. Madame Beatrice felt deeply hurt, but her determination became stronger. She knew she could end the test immediately, remove the disguise, and send Vanessa out of the mansion, but Adrian was still blinded by love. He needed proof of Vanessa's true character, and Madame Beatrice was determined to gather it. She wiped the small mark from the mirror, picked up the bucket, and continued working without complaint. Although her body was tired and her heart was filled with pain, she remained in character and silently endured everything because she wanted to discover how far Vanessa's cruelty would go. The following morning, Madame Beatrice woke before sunrise and quietly prepared herself for another difficult day inside her son's mansion. Her body still hurt from the heavy work Vanessa had forced her to do, and the red marks on her palms had not completely disappeared. She sat on the edge of the small bed for a moment and slowly moved her fingers. Every movement caused pain, but she refused to complain. Ruth, the young maid who shared the room with her, was still asleep, so Madame Beatrice carefully picked up her old headscarf and tied it around her head. She looked into the small mirror on the wall and saw Auntie Grace staring back at her. The faded gown, large glasses, tired expression and bent shoulders hid the wealthy and powerful woman she truly was. She took a deep breath and reminded herself why she had entered the mansion in disguise. She was not there to prove that Vanessa had a bad temper. She was there to discover whether the young woman had the honesty, kindness, and patience needed to become Adrian's wife. So far, everything she had seen had filled her with fear. Vanessa was not only rude to the workers, she enjoyed making them feel small. She believed that poor people had no voice and no one would defend them. Madame Beatrice knew that she could reveal herself and end the suffering immediately, but she also knew Adrian might still defend Vanessa. His love for his fiancée was strong, and Vanessa was very skilled at crying, lying, and making herself appear innocent. Madame Beatrice therefore decided to remain patient until she had evidence that could not be explained away. A few minutes later, Ruth opened her eyes and saw Auntie Grace standing near the door. "Your hands are still swollen," she said with concern. "You should tell Mrs. Helen that you cannot do heavy work today." Madame Beatrice gave her a weak smile. "I will be fine, my daughter." Ruth sat up and looked at her carefully. "You always say you will be fine, but Miss Vanessa keeps giving you more work. She does not care about your age." "Do not worry about me," Madame Beatrice said softly. "Just be careful with what you say. You need this job." Ruth sighed. "I know, but what she's doing is wrong." Before Madame Beatrice could reply, Vanessa's voice rang through the hallway. "Auntie Grace, where is that woman?" Madame Beatrice quickly opened the door and stepped outside. Vanessa stood at the end of the hallway wearing an expensive silk nightgown. Her face was hard and impatient. "Why are you still inside your room?" she demanded. "I was just coming out, Madame," Auntie Grace replied. "I do not pay you to sleep until the sun comes out. Go to the kitchen and prepare hot water with lemon. My friends are coming this afternoon and I want the living room cleaned again." Madame Beatrice lowered her head. "Yes, Madame. And make sure you polish the glass table properly. The last time you cleaned it, I saw marks." Madame Beatrice knew that the table had been perfectly clean, but she did not argue. She went downstairs and began her duties. By 8 o'clock, she had swept the downstairs rooms, helped prepare breakfast, cleaned the dining area, and polished the living room furniture. Vanessa came downstairs, looked around, and immediately searched for something to complain about. She ran one finger across the glass table and stared at it, even though there was no dust. "Clean it again," she said. "It is already clean, Madame," Auntie Grace answered carefully. Vanessa's eyes became cold. "Did I ask for your opinion?" "No, Madame." "Then clean it again. I do not want to repeat myself." Madame Beatrice picked up the cloth and wiped the table again, while Vanessa watched her. There was a strange satisfaction in Vanessa's eyes whenever she gave the elderly maid unnecessary work. She seemed to enjoy knowing that Auntie Grace could not challenge her. Later that afternoon, 3 of Vanessa's friends arrived at the mansion. Their names were Cynthia, Anita, and Melissa. They were fashionable young women who enjoyed expensive clothes, luxurious restaurants, and gossip about wealthy people. Vanessa welcomed them warmly and led them into the living room. They had come to discuss the wedding dress, decoration colors, bridesmaids' clothes, and honeymoon plans. Madame Beatrice served them juice, small cakes, and fruit while pretending not to listen to their conversation. Vanessa showed them pictures of a costly wedding gown on her tablet. "This is the one I want," she said proudly. "It is being made in Paris. The designer said it will arrive 3 days before the wedding." Cynthia's eyes widened. "It must be very expensive." Vanessa smiled. "Adrian can afford it. I refuse to wear an ordinary dress for a wedding that the whole country will be talking about." Melissa laughed. "Ha ha ha, you are going to become Mrs. Williams. Nothing about your life will ever be ordinary again." Vanessa leaned back comfortably on the sofa. "That is exactly why everything must be perfect." Madame Beatrice entered with a tray containing 4 clean glasses and a bottle of sparkling water. Her hands were still painful, but she held the tray carefully. As she bent to place it on the center table, one glass moved towards the edge. She quickly tried to catch it, but it slipped from her hand and fell to the floor. The glass broke into several sharp pieces. The room became silent. Madame Beatrice froze and looked down. "I am very sorry, madame," she said immediately. Vanessa stared at the glass as though something terrible had happened. "What is wrong with you?" she shouted. "It was an accident," Madame Beatrice replied. "I will clean it at once." "You are always having accidents. Yesterday you nearly dropped one of my boxes. Today you have broken an expensive glass. Are your eyes no longer working?" Madame Beatrice lowered her head. "I am sorry." "Sorry will not replace my glass," Vanessa snapped. Anita looked uncomfortable. "Vanessa, it is only one glass. She did not do it on purpose." Vanessa turned sharply towards her. "It may be only one glass to you, but if I allow the workers to break things without punishment, they will destroy the whole house." Cynthia said nothing. She simply picked up her drink and watched. Melissa looked at Auntie Grace and then at Vanessa, but she also remained silent. Vanessa pointed at the floor. "Kneel down and pick up every piece." Madame Beatrice looked at the sharp glass. "Madame, please, allow me to bring a broom and a dustpan. The pieces may cut my hands." Vanessa's face hardened. "Did you use a broom to break it?" "No, madame." "Then use your hands to pick it up." Anita sat forward. "Vanessa, that is dangerous. She could cut herself." Vanessa laughed without kindness. "Perhaps a small cut will teach her to be careful next time." Madame Beatrice felt anger rise inside her chest. She wanted to straighten her back, remove the glasses, and tell Vanessa that she had no right to treat another human being in such a cruel way. She wanted to order the guards to send Vanessa out of the mansion. However, she remembered Adrian's face when he had defended his fiancée. She remembered how easily Vanessa had cried and changed the story after the charity event. Madame Beatrice slowly knelt on the floor. Ruth, who had heard the breaking glass from the hallway, appeared at the living room entrance with a broom in her hand. "Auntie Grace, let me help you," she said. Vanessa turned towards her. "Who called you?" Ruth stopped. "No one, madame. I heard the glass break." "Return to the kitchen," Vanessa ordered. "But the pieces are sharp," Ruth said quietly. "I said return to the kitchen," Vanessa shouted. Ruth looked at Auntie Grace with sadness, but obeyed. Madame Beatrice carefully picked up the larger pieces. One sharp edge touched her finger and made a small cut. She quickly pulled her hand back. A tiny drop of blood appeared. Anita stood up. "This is enough, Vanessa. Let her use the broom." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Why are you behaving as if I asked her to jump from the roof? She broke the glass. She is cleaning it." Anita walked to the corner, picked up the dustpan Ruth had left near the doorway and handed it to Auntie Grace. "Please use this," she said. Vanessa looked displeased, but she did not stop her friend. Madame Beatrice quietly swept the remaining pieces into the dustpan. Her eyes burned with tears, but she did not allow them to fall. She stood slowly and carried the broken glass away. As she reached the kitchen, Ruth took her injured hand and examined it. "She's wicked," Ruth whispered. "Please, do not say that loudly," Madame Beatrice warned her. Mrs. Helen came closer and saw the cut, her face filled with anger and pain. "Madam, this has gone too far," she whispered when no one else was near. "Let us end this test. You have seen enough." Madame Beatrice shook her head. "Not yet." "She could have injured you badly." "I know," Madame Beatrice replied, "but Adrian must see proof with his own eyes. If I reveal myself now, Vanessa will cry and say she was only correcting a careless worker. She will make herself the victim again." Mrs. Helen sighed deeply. "I'm afraid of what she may do next." "So am I," Madame Beatrice admitted. "That is why we must continue watching her." Mrs. Helen cleaned the small cut and covered it with a bandage. Madame Beatrice then returned to her duties. Vanessa's friend stayed for several hours. Madame Beatrice moved quietly between the kitchen and living room, serving food and collecting empty plates. As the women continued discussing the wedding, their conversation slowly changed. They began speaking about Adrian's money, his houses, and the life Vanessa expected to enjoy after the marriage. "Have you decided where you will spend your honeymoon?" Melissa asked. Adrian suggested a quiet island, but I told him I want us to visit 3 countries. I'm not marrying a billionaire to spend my honeymoon in one place. Cynthia laughed. "At least you are honest." Vanessa smiled confidently. A man like Adrian needs a woman who knows what she wants. Madame Beatrice entered, carrying another bottle of water. Vanessa glanced at her and waved her away after she placed it on the table. Auntie Grace moved towards the hallway, but stopped near the dining room entrance, where she could still hear them clearly. Anita looked at Vanessa. "Do you truly love Adrian, or are you more excited about becoming Mrs. Williams?" Vanessa laughed. "Love is important, but love cannot pay bills." Anita did not answer the question. Vanessa crossed her legs and lowered her voice, though it was still loud enough for Madame Beatrice to hear. "Adrian is handsome, respectful, and easy to control. Of course I like him, but I would not be preparing to marry him if he were an ordinary office worker." Cynthia burst into laughter. "At least you are honest." Vanessa continued. "Every woman wants a comfortable life. Some of us are simply brave enough to admit it. Adrian has everything I need. He has money, businesses, houses, and a powerful name." Melissa leaned closer. "But most of the properties are still connected to the family company. His mother controls a large part of everything." Vanessa's smile disappeared slightly. "That will change after the wedding." Madame Beatrice's heart began to beat faster. She quietly reached into a hidden pocket inside her faded gown and switched on the small recording device Mr. Collins had given her before she entered the mansion. "What do you mean?" Cynthia asked. Vanessa picked up her glass. "Once I become his wife, I will slowly convince him to put some properties in my name. I already know which ones I want. The new hotel near the airport will be very profitable, and there are 2 apartment buildings that Adrian owns personally." Anita frowned. "Adrian may not agree." Vanessa smiled. "He will agree. He loves me, and he hates me seeing unhappy. I only need to choose the right time." Melissa looked around the mansion. "What about Madame Beatrice? She watches everything." Vanessa's face became cold. "That woman is the only real problem." Madame Beatrice stood still behind the wall. Hearing herself described as a problem by the woman her son wanted to marry caused deep pain in her heart. "She does not trust you," Cynthia said. "I know," Vanessa replied. "She keeps looking at me as if she can see through me. After the wedding, I will convince Adrian that his mother needs rest. She is already old. She should travel abroad or stay with her sister or live in one of the family houses far from us." Anita looked shocked. "You want to send his mother away?" "I want peace in my marriage. As long as she remains close, she will continue interfering. Adrian listens to everything she says. I need him to depend on me instead." "Madame Beatrice helped build the company," Anita reminded her. Vanessa shrugged. "That was many years ago. It is Adrian's time now. The old woman should enjoy her money quietly and stop acting as if she controls everyone." Madame Beatrice felt as though a heavy stone had been placed on her chest. She had welcomed Vanessa, bought her gifts, and agreed to support the wedding despite her concerns. Yet, Vanessa wanted to remove her from her son's life and take control of the wealth she and her late husband had spent years building. Vanessa continued speaking without knowing that every word was being recorded. "Adrian also wastes too much money on workers and charities," she complained. "Last month, he paid the hospital bills of people he did not even know. He gives scholarships to children whose parents should be responsible for them." Cynthia smiled. "He has always been generous." "He is too generous," Vanessa replied. "Poor people will never stop asking for help. Most of them are lazy. They sit around waiting for wealthy people to rescue them." Anita looked uncomfortable again. "Some people are truly suffering, Vanessa." "Everyone has problems," Vanessa said. "That does not mean Adrian should use our future money to solve them." Madame Beatrice pressed one hand against the wall to steady herself. The words hurt her deeply because helping struggling families had been one of Adrian's greatest joys. His generosity came from the values his parents had taught him. Vanessa did not only want his money, she wanted to change the kind of man he was. Madame Beatrice slowly returned to the kitchen before anyone noticed her listening. Mrs. Helen saw the pain on her face. "What happened?" she asked. Madame Beatrice looked towards the living room and spoke quietly. "She does not love him. She wants his properties. She also wants to send me away after the wedding." Mrs. Helen covered her mouth in shock. "Did you record it?" "Yes," Madame Beatrice answered. "But I need more." "More?" Mrs. Helen asked. "Madame, those words are already enough." Madame Beatrice shook her head. "You know, Adrian, he may say she was joking with her friends or speaking carelessly. Vanessa will cry and claim the recording was taken out of context. I need something she cannot deny." Over the next few days, Madame Beatrice continued working as Auntie Grace while secretly keeping the recording device near her. Vanessa remained cruel and demanding. She shouted when her breakfast arrived late, complained about the temperature of her bath water, and ordered the workers to change the decorations several times. Whenever Adrian called, she became gentle and loving. She spoke about how much she missed him and how well she was treating everyone. Adrian believed her completely. One evening, after speaking with him, Vanessa handed the phone to Auntie Grace. "Adrian wants to greet you," she said. Madame Beatrice accepted the phone with both hands. "Good evening, sir," she said softly. Adrian smiled from the screen. "Good evening, Auntie Grace. How is the work?" Madame Beatrice looked at Vanessa, who stood close by watching her carefully. "The work is fine, sir." "Adrian told me you hurt your hand," Adrian said. Madame Beatrice glanced down at the bandage. She wondered what story Vanessa had told him. "It was only a small cut," she replied. Vanessa quickly moved closer to the phone. "She broke a glass, but I treated the injury myself and asked her to rest," she said sweetly. Madame Beatrice looked at her in disbelief. Vanessa had not touched the injury or offered her any rest. Mrs. Helen had treated the wound, while Vanessa continued laughing with her friends. Adrian smiled with pride. "Thank you for taking care of her." "Of course," Vanessa answered. "She is like a mother to all of us." Madame Beatrice felt sickened by the lie, but she remained silent. After the call ended, Vanessa took the phone from her. "You can go," she said coldly. Auntie Grace turned to leave. "And do not forget to clean the upstairs sitting room before you sleep." Madame Beatrice walked late into the night. When she finally entered the staff room, Ruth was waiting for her. "She told Mr. Adrian that you treated your wound," she said. "I heard everything." Madame Beatrice sat down slowly. "One day, the truth will come out." "I hope it comes out before she marries him," Ruth replied. Madame Beatrice looked at the hidden recording device in her hand. "It will." A few days later, Vanessa's younger brother Leo arrived at the mansion without informing anyone. He was 28 years old, handsome, but careless, and he lived a life far above what he could afford. He wore expensive clothes, drove borrowed cars, and spent money in nightclubs to impress his friends. Vanessa had helped him many times, but he always returned with a new problem. That afternoon, Leo entered the mansion looking frightened and restless. His shirt was untidy, sweat covered his forehead, and he kept checking through the windows as if someone had followed him. Vanessa was upstairs trying on a wedding shoe when Mrs. Helen informed her that her brother had arrived. Vanessa came downstairs quickly. "Why are you here?" she asked. Leo looked at the workers and lowered his voice. "I need to speak to you privately." Vanessa led him into the smaller sitting room and closed the door. Madame Beatrice was dusting the hallway nearby. When she saw Leo's troubled expression, she became curious. She moved slowly towards the door and began wiping a table close enough to hear them. "What have you done this time?" Vanessa asked. Leo began walking around the room. "I need money." Vanessa folded her arms. "You always need money." "This is serious," Leo said. "I borrowed from some people and I could not pay them back." "How much?" Vanessa asked. Leo mentioned an amount so large that Vanessa stared at him in shock. "Are you mad? What did you do with that kind of money?" Leo looked away. "I thought I could win it back." Vanessa's eyes widened. "You gambled again?" "I had a plan," Leo said quickly. "Everything went wrong." Vanessa sat down and pressed her fingers against her forehead. "I warned you to stop gambling." "This is not the time to lecture me," Leo replied. "The men gave me 3 days. They know where I live." They threatened to hurt me. Vanessa looked frightened, but her fear quickly turned to anger. Why should your foolishness become my problem? Because you are my sister, Leo answered, and because you are about to marry one of the richest men in the country. I am not married to him yet, Vanessa said. I cannot ask Adrian for such a large amount without giving him a reason. Leo sat beside her. Tell him it is for the wedding. He is not stupid, Vanessa replied. He checks large payments. Then take it without telling him, Leo said. Vanessa stared at him. How? Leo leaned closer. This house must have cash somewhere. Rich men always keep money in their private rooms. Vanessa became quiet. Madame Beatrice held the cleaning cloth tightly as she listened. Adrian has a safe in his study, Vanessa said after a long pause. I have seen it. Then open it. I do not know the password, Vanessa replied. He never opens it when I am inside the room. Leo looked towards the door and lowered his voice. What about the workers? One of them may know. Vanessa thought for a moment. Mrs. Helen has worked here for years, but she is too loyal. She will never help us. There must be someone else, Leo said. Vanessa suddenly remembered Auntie Grace. The old maid sometimes cleans the study, she said. Perhaps she has seen Adrian opening the safe. Madame Beatrice's heart began to beat faster. She quietly moved away from the door before they came outside. A few minutes later, Vanessa called for her. Auntie Grace, come here. Madame Beatrice entered the smaller sitting room with her head lowered. Leo looked at her without interest. Vanessa pointed towards a chair but did not allow her to sit. You clean Mr. Adrian's study, do you not? She asked. Sometimes, madam, Auntie Grace answered. Have you ever seen him opening the safe? Madame Beatrice pretended to think. No, madam. Vanessa studied her face. Think carefully. The safe is behind the large painting. I have seen the safe while cleaning, but I do not know how to open it. Leo stood and moved closer. Maybe you have seen him pressing the numbers. Madame Beatrice stepped back slightly and acted frightened. No, sir, I have never been inside when he opened it. Vanessa opened her handbag, removed some money and held it out. Find the password for me and this will be yours. Madame Beatrice looked at the money and then at Vanessa. Madam, I cannot enter Mr. Adrian's private things. Vanessa smiled coldly. You are only a maid. I am going to be his wife. Anything that belongs to Adrian will soon belong to me. I understand, madam, but I cannot help you, Auntie Grace said. Leo looked impatient. She is wasting our time. Vanessa put the money back into her bag. Listen to me carefully, old woman. You need this job and I can send you away whenever I want. Find that password. Madame Beatrice shook her head slowly. I am sorry, madam. I do not know it. Vanessa moved closer until they were standing face to face. If you refuse to help me, I can make your life very difficult. Madame Beatrice remained silent. Things can easily disappear in a large house. A necklace, a ring, or some money could find its way into your bag. Who do you think the police would believe? Me or a poor old maid? Madame Beatrice felt a cold chill pass through her body. Vanessa was no longer merely insulting workers. She was openly threatening to frame an innocent woman. I have never stolen anything, Auntie Grace said softly. It does not matter what you have done, Vanessa replied. What matters is what people believe. Leo laughed quietly. She understands now. Vanessa pointed towards the door. You have until tomorrow. Go. Madame Beatrice walked out of the room with weak steps, but inside her mind, she was thinking quickly. She went directly to the laundry area where Mrs. Helen was checking clean bed sheets. Vanessa and her brother want to steal from Adrian's safe, she whispered. Mrs. Helen stared at her. What? I know. No one must reveal my identity unless my life is in danger. That evening, Vanessa entered her bedroom and stood in front of her jewelry cabinet. She opened a velvet box and removed a diamond bracelet Adrian had given her for her birthday. It was valuable and easy to recognize. Leo stood near the door watching her. "Are you certain about this?" he asked. Vanessa placed the bracelet in her palm. "The old woman refused to help us. Once this is found in her bag, she will become frightened. Then she will do whatever I ask." "What if she still does not know the password?" Leo asked. "At least I will remove her from this house. She watches me too much." Later that night, most of the workers gathered in the kitchen for dinner. Vanessa pretended to go upstairs, but she quietly walked through the staff hallway. Auntie Grace's room was empty and the door was partly open. She looked around before entering. She did not notice the small camera fixed high in the corner of the hallway. The camera clearly showed her stepping into the room. Inside, she saw Auntie Grace's old cloth bag near the bed. She opened it, pushed the diamond bracelet under a folded gown and closed the bag. She then left the room and returned upstairs. The next morning, Vanessa waited until all the workers were busy before raising an alarm. She opened her jewelry cabinet and began to shout, "Mrs. Helen, everyone should come upstairs immediately." The workers rushed towards her bedroom. Vanessa stood in front of the open cabinet with an angry expression. "My diamond bracelet is missing," she announced. Mrs. Helen pretended to be surprised. "Are you certain it is not in another box?" "I know where I keep my jewelry," Vanessa snapped. "Someone entered this room and stole it." Ruth looked frightened. Clara held her hands together nervously. Madame Beatrice stood quietly near the door. Vanessa looked at each worker. "No one is leaving this house until the bracelet is found." Mrs. Helen tried to remain calm. "We can search the rooms carefully." "Call the security guards," Vanessa ordered. "Search every worker and every bag." 2 security guards entered the house. They looked uncomfortable, but Vanessa insisted that they begin immediately. The workers were taken downstairs one after another. Their bags and rooms were checked. Nothing was found in Mrs. Helen's room, Ruth's belongings, or Clara's cupboard. Vanessa followed them closely, pretending to be impatient. When they reached Auntie Grace's room, Vanessa folded her hands. "Search everything," she said. Madame Beatrice stood near the doorway. She knew what they were about to find, but she continued acting confused. One guard opened her cloth bag and removed the folded clothes. The diamond bracelet fell onto the bed. Everyone gasped. Ruth covered her mouth. Clara stared at Auntie Grace in disbelief. Vanessa immediately picked up the bracelet. "I knew it," she shouted. "You are a thief." Madame Beatrice shook her head. "I did not put that inside my bag." "It was found among your clothes," Vanessa replied. "How else did it enter there?" "Someone must have placed it there," Auntie Grace said. Vanessa moved closer. "Do not lie to me." Ruth stepped forward. "Auntie Grace would never steal. She is honest." "Were you watching her every moment?" Vanessa asked. "No, but—" "Then keep quiet." Clara also spoke carefully. "Miss Vanessa, perhaps there's another explanation." Vanessa turned towards her. "Anyone who defends this thief may be working with her." Clara quickly became silent. Mrs. Helen looked at the bracelet and then at Madame Beatrice. "We should check the cameras before accusing anyone," she suggested. Vanessa's eyes changed for a moment. "What cameras?" Mrs. Helen realized Vanessa did not know about the new camera in the staff hallway. "The security cameras around the mansion," she answered carefully. Vanessa quickly recovered. "The bracelet has already been found. We do not need cameras." "I did not steal the bracelet," Auntie Grace repeated. Vanessa suddenly raised her hand and slapped the elderly woman across the face. The sound filled the small room. Ruth screamed softly. Madame Beatrice's glasses nearly fell and pain spread across her cheek. For 1 second, everyone remained completely still. Madame Beatrice slowly turned her face back towards Vanessa. Deep anger burned inside her, but she forced herself to remain weak and frightened. "How dare you steal from me and still deny it?" Auntie Grace shouted. "Madame, I did not take your bracelet," Auntie Grace said, her voice shaking with emotion. "I have worked honestly since I entered this house." "Call the police," Vanessa ordered. Mrs. Helen stepped forward. Miss Vanessa, please let us investigate first. There is nothing to investigate, Vanessa replied. The evidence was inside her bag. How else did it enter there? Ruth began to cry. Please do not arrest her. She is an old woman. Vanessa looked at her with disgust. Being old does not make her innocent. As one of the guards called the police, Mrs. Helen quietly moved away and sent a message to Madame Beatrice's lawyer, Mr. Daniel Cole, and the head of her private security team. She explained what had happened and told them to meet at the police station. The police arrived a short time later. 2 officers entered the mansion and listened as Vanessa told her story. She claimed the bracelet had disappeared from her bedroom and had been found hidden inside Auntie Grace's bag. I welcomed this woman into my home because I felt sorry for her, she said dramatically. This is how she repaid my kindness. Madame Beatrice stood quietly with one hand against her painful cheek. One officer looked at her. Do you have anything to say? He asked. I did not steal the bracelet, I answered. Someone placed it in my bag. Vanessa laughed. How would place my bracelet in your dirty bag? The officer warned her to remain calm. Madame Beatrice was taken to the police station for questioning. Mrs. Helen asked to follow, but Vanessa insisted on going herself because she wanted to make sure Auntie Grace was locked up. At the police station, Madame Beatrice sat on a hard bench while an officer wrote down her details. She gave the name Grace Johnson, the false identity that had been prepared for her. Vanessa stood nearby, speaking loudly to another officer. I want her kept here, she said. She may have stolen other things from the house. The officer replied, we must investigate before making any decision. The stolen item was found in her bag, Vanessa insisted. What more do you need? Madame Beatrice looked down and pretended to cry. Please, madame, she begged. I did not steal from you. I have children who depend on me. Do not destroy my life. Vanessa showed no mercy. You should have remembered your children before touching my property. Please forgive me, even if you believe I did it, Auntie Grace continued. I am an old woman. I cannot survive inside a cell. That is not my problem, Vanessa replied. Poor people always use tears when they are caught. Madame Beatrice looked at her and felt the last part of her hope disappear. Even while believing she had complete power over a helpless elderly maid, Vanessa could not show a small amount of mercy. A few minutes later, Mrs. Helen arrived with the family lawyer and a security officer. Vanessa frowned when she saw them. Why is a lawyer here? She asked. Mrs. Helen remained calm. Every accused person has a right to legal help. Vanessa looked at Auntie Grace suspiciously. How can a maid afford this lawyer? Mr. Cole answered before Madame Beatrice could speak. I sometimes provide free legal assistance to elderly people who cannot defend themselves. Vanessa did not look convinced, but she said nothing. Mrs. Helen quietly handed the security officer a copy of the camera recording. He played it on his laptop and called the investigating officer. The officer watched the footage carefully. It showed Vanessa entering the staff room while everyone else was in the kitchen. It also showed her bending over Auntie Grace's bag and placing something inside. Although the bracelet was small, her actions were clear. The officer watched the recording twice before calling Vanessa into the room. Madam, we have received security footage from the mansion, he said. Vanessa's face changed. What footage? The officer turned the laptop towards her. Vanessa watched herself entering the room and opening Auntie Grace's bag. Her lips parted, but no words came out at first. Can you explain this? The officer asked. Vanessa quickly recovered. That recording has been edited. Why did you enter the maid's room? I was searching for something, Vanessa answered. What were you placing inside her bag? I was not placing anything there. The footage shows your hand entering the bag, the officer said. Vanessa folded her arms. Someone has changed the video to embarrass me. Mrs. Helen has never liked me. She may have planned this with the maid. Mrs. Helen stared at her in disbelief. I did not plan anything. Vanessa pointed at her. You are loyal to Adrian's mother. Perhaps she sent you to cause problems before the wedding. The officer raised his hand. Enough. We will have the recording examined, but this evidence means we cannot hold the accused woman. Vanessa became angry. You are releasing her? Yes, the officer replied. There is strong reason to believe she was framed. Madam Beatrice was officially released. Mr. Cole quietly asked whether she wanted to file an immediate complaint against Vanessa for false accusation and assault. Madam Beatrice thought about Adrian and the final proof she still wanted to present. Not yet, she answered softly while remaining in character. I only want to leave. The officer warned Vanessa that the matter was not over and that she might be invited for further questioning after the recording was examined. Vanessa left the station feeling angry and humiliated. On the drive back to the mansion, she blamed Mrs. Helen for everything. You installed cameras without telling me, she said from the back seat. The cameras were approved by Mr. Adrian before he traveled, Mrs. Helen replied. Some household supplies had gone missing. You gave the recording to the police because you wanted to embarrass me. I gave them the truth, Mrs. Helen answered. Vanessa's eyes became cold. Be careful, Mrs. Helen. Once I marry Adrian, I will decide who continues working in that house. Mrs. Helen said no more. When they returned to the mansion, the other workers gathered near the hallway. Ruth rushed towards Auntie Grace and held her hands. Thank God you are free, she said with tears in her eyes. Vanessa entered behind them and shouted, Everyone should return to work. Ruth stepped away. Vanessa looked at Auntie Grace with hatred. Pack your things and leave this house. Madam Beatrice looked at her. The police saw that I did not steal the bracelet. I do not care what they saw, Vanessa replied. I do not want you here. You placed the bracelet in my bag, Auntie Grace said quietly. Vanessa moved closer. You cannot prove anything. That video was false. The camera recorded the truth, Mrs. Helen said. Vanessa turned towards her. Stay out of this. She looked back at Auntie Grace. You have 10 minutes to leave. If I see you in this mansion after that, I will have the guards throw you outside. Madam Beatrice slowly entered the staff room and packed her few clothes into the old bag. Ruth followed her, crying quietly. Where will you go? She asked. I have somewhere to stay, Madam Beatrice assured her. Please do not worry. I am sorry we could not protect you. Madam Beatrice touched Ruth's face gently. You showed me kindness when you believed I had nothing. Never lose that good heart. Mrs. Helen entered and closed the door. Your car is waiting near the back gate, she whispered. Mr. Collins is there. Madam Beatrice nodded. Do not tell Adrian anything yet. Mrs. Helen looked shocked. Even after everything that happened? Not yet, Madam Beatrice said. I want Vanessa to expose herself in front of him and both families. If we tell him privately, she will create another story. What will you do? Mrs. Helen asked. Madam Beatrice's eyes became firm. I will arrange a family dinner. She picked up her old bag and walked through the mansion for the last time as Auntie Grace. The workers saw her sadly as she left. Vanessa stood near the staircase with her arms folded. Do not ever return here, she warned. Madam Beatrice paused at the door and looked back at her. Sometimes the person we treat as nothing may be the person who knows the truth about us, she said quietly. Vanessa laughed. Save your wise words for someone who cares. Madam Beatrice walked out of the mansion without answering. At the back gate, Mr. Collins helped her into an ordinary car. Once they had driven far from the house, Madam Beatrice removed her glasses and leaned back against the seat. Tears finally rolled down her cheeks. She had endured insults, heavy work, a painful slap and a false accusation. But the deepest pain came from knowing that her son loved the woman responsible for it. Mr. Collins looked at her through the mirror. Madam, I am sorry. No one should have treated you that way. Madam Beatrice wiped her tears. She believed I was poor and helpless. That is why she showed me her real heart. When she reached her private mansion, the makeup artist helped remove the dark marks and artificial wrinkles from her face. She took a warm bath and changed into clean, comfortable clothes. A doctor examined the small cut on her hand and the swelling on her cheek. Her body was tired, but her mind remained clear. She listened again to the recordings of Vanessa speaking about Adrian's properties, the charities, and her plan to send Madame Beatrice abroad. She also watched the security footage of Vanessa placing the bracelet inside the bag. This time, there was no doubt. She finally had the evidence she needed. 2 days later, Adrian returned from his business trip. He arrived at the mansion in the evening carrying gifts for Vanessa and his mother. Vanessa ran outside to welcome him. She wore a beautiful dress and embraced him tightly. "I missed you so much," she said. Adrian smiled and kissed her forehead. "I missed you too. How are the wedding plans?" "Everything is going well," Vanessa replied, "but something terrible happened while you were away." Adrian became concerned. "What happened?" Vanessa led him into the living room and asked the workers to bring his bags upstairs. Mrs. Helen stood nearby, watching silently.
Vanessa sat beside Adrian and held his hand. "The temporary maid stole my diamond bracelet," she said sadly. Adrian frowned. "Auntie Grace?" "Yes," Vanessa answered. "I treated that woman like a member of the family. I gave her food, work, and a place to sleep. She repaid me by stealing from me." Mrs. Helen looked down, so Adrian would not see the anger in her eyes. "Where is she now?" Adrian asked. "I dismissed her," Vanessa replied. "The bracelet was found in her bag." "Did you call the police?" "Yes, but I later decided not to press charges," Vanessa lied. "She's an old woman and I felt sorry for her. I did not want her to spend the rest of her life in prison." Adrian looked proud of her. That was merciful. Vanessa rested her head on his shoulder. "I was hurt, but I remembered that everyone deserves another chance." Mrs. Helen could no longer bear the lies. She stepped forward. "Sir, that is not exactly what happened." Vanessa quickly looked at her. "Mrs. Helen, this is a private conversation." Adrian turned towards the housekeeper. "What do you mean?" Mrs. Helen opened her mouth, but her phone vibrated in her pocket. She looked at the screen and saw a message from Madame Beatrice, reminding her to remain silent until the family dinner. Mrs. Helen took a slow breath. "I only wanted to say that the police released Auntie Grace," she answered carefully. Vanessa smiled tightly. "Yes, because I decided not to continue with the matter." Adrian nodded. "I understand." Mrs. Helen stepped back, though every part of her wanted to reveal the truth. Later that night, she called Madame Beatrice. "Madame, Vanessa lied to him," she said. "She told him she forgave Auntie Grace and chose not to press charges." "I expected her to lie," Madame Beatrice replied calmly. Adrian believed her. "He will not believe her for much longer," Madame Beatrice said. "Do you still have the original camera recording?" "Yes, Madame. I saved several copies." "Good. Keep them safe. I also have the voice recordings." The following morning, Madame Beatrice called Adrian and told him she had returned from her visit to her sister. Adrian sounded happy to hear her voice. "Welcome back, mother. I brought you something from my trip." "Thank you, my son," she replied. "I would like us to have a family dinner at your mansion." "When?" Adrian asked. "At the end of the week. The wedding is only 1 week away. Both families should sit together before the ceremony. Invite Vanessa's parents, her brother, and the close relatives who will be involved in the wedding." Adrian liked the idea. "That sounds wonderful. Vanessa will be happy." "I am sure she will," Madame Beatrice said. After ending the call, Adrian told Vanessa about the dinner. Vanessa became excited because she believed it was another opportunity to impress Madame Beatrice and show everyone that she was the perfect future wife. She immediately began planning the food, flowers, table decorations, and clothes she would wear. She had no idea that Madame Beatrice was also making her own preparations. While Vanessa planned to welcome both families with a perfect smile, Madame Beatrice carefully arranged the voice recordings, copied the security footage, and contacted her lawyer. She instructed Mrs. Helen to prepare the large TV in the living room and make sure it could display the evidence clearly when the time came. She also kept the faded gown, old headscarf, and large glasses she had worn as Auntie Grace. The test had finally ended and the truth was ready to be revealed. With only 1 week remaining before the wedding, Madame Beatrice organized the grand dinner at Adrian's mansion and announced that she wanted both families to meet before the marriage ceremony.
On the morning of the family dinner, Vanessa woke up earlier than usual because she wanted everything to be perfect. She believed the gathering would finally remove every doubt Madame Beatrice had about her and prove that she was the right woman for Adrian. She called the decorators before breakfast and ordered them to bring fresh white roses, gold table decorations, and expensive candles for the dining room. She also asked the cooks to prepare more food than the guests could possibly eat because she wanted both families to see how well she could manage a wealthy home. Vanessa walked around the mansion giving instructions to everyone. She told Mrs. Helen to polish the dining table again, even though it was already shining. She ordered Ruth and Clara to change the flower arrangements 3 times because she did not like the way the colors looked beside the curtains. She complained that the glasses were not placed correctly and made the workers remove every plate from the table and arrange them again. Nothing must go wrong tonight, she warned them. Madame Beatrice will be watching everything, and I do not want any careless mistake. Mrs. Helen looked at Vanessa calmly, but inside her heart, she knew the young woman had no idea what was waiting for her. Everything will be ready, she replied. Vanessa pointed at Ruth. Make sure the workers remain in the kitchen unless they are serving. I do not want anyone walking around and disturbing the guests. Ruth lowered her head. Yes, madam. Then Vanessa turned to Mrs. Helen. And I do not want to hear the name of that old maid today. Auntie Grace is gone and she must remain gone. Mrs. Helen controlled her expression. Yes, Miss Vanessa. Vanessa walked away without noticing the brief look Mrs. Helen exchanged with Ruth. The workers had not been told the full plan, but Mrs. Helen had quietly instructed them to remain calm no matter what happened during the dinner. She had also tested the large television in the living room and connected it to a small computer containing the voice recordings and security footage. Madame Beatrice's lawyer had arrived earlier through the back entrance and was waiting in a private room with 2 trusted security officers. No one outside the plan knew they were there. At her own mansion, Madame Beatrice prepared for the evening in silence. She had not slept well because she knew the truth would break her son's heart. Although she was angry with Vanessa, she did not feel happy about humiliating her. Madame Beatrice had once hoped Vanessa would become a loving wife to Adrian and a kind daughter to her. She had wanted the wedding to bring joy to both families, but Vanessa's actions had destroyed that hope. Madame Beatrice stood before a large mirror while the makeup artist once again changed her appearance. The woman added light wrinkles and dark marks to her face, placed the rough wig beneath the worn headscarf, and helped her put on the same faded brown gown she had worn as Auntie Grace. Madame Beatrice put on the large glasses and bent her shoulders. When she looked into the mirror, she no longer saw the wealthy widow known by business leaders and important families. She saw the poor elderly maid Vanessa had insulted, overworked, slapped, and falsely accused. Mr. Collins stood near the door with a worried expression. Madam, everything is ready, he said. Your lawyer has confirmed that the police will arrive after the evidence is shown. Madame Beatrice nodded. They must not enter before Vanessa exposes herself in front of everyone. Are you sure you want to enter alone? He asked. Yes, she replied. If she sees anyone protecting me, she may control her behavior. I want Adrian to witness the way she treats someone she believes has no power. Mr. Collins looked at her with concern. This will be painful for him. Madame Beatrice's eyes became sad. It will be more painful if he discovers the truth after marrying her. She picked up the old cloth bag and held it against her chest. Let us go. Meanwhile, Adrian returned to the mansion in the afternoon after attending a short meeting at the office. He found Vanessa in the bedroom trying on jewelry in front of the mirror. She wore a long emerald green gown that fitted her perfectly. Her hair had been carefully styled and a makeup artist was applying color to her lips. Adrian smiled when he entered. You look beautiful, he said. Vanessa turned and smiled brightly. Do you like it? Very much, he replied. She stood and moved closer to him. Tonight is important. I want your mother to see that I can make you happy. Adrian touched her shoulder. You do not have to prove anything. She agreed to the wedding. Vanessa's smile remained, but inside she was not satisfied. She wanted more than Madame Beatrice's agreement. She wanted her complete trust so that she could easily influence Adrian after the wedding. I only want both families to be united, she said sweetly. Adrian kissed her forehead. They will be. Vanessa then helped him choose a dark suit and a gold tie that matched the decorations. As he prepared, she watched him through the mirror and imagined the life she believed was only days away. She imagined signing documents as Mrs. Vanessa Williams, traveling in private aircraft, attending business events, and controlling the mansion without anyone questioning her. She imagined the properties she would convince Adrian to transfer into her name. She also imagined Madame Beatrice living far away where she could no longer interfere. Vanessa felt certain that the difficult days were over. She had removed Auntie Grace from the house, Adrian believed her story, and the wedding was only 1 week away. The first guests began to arrive shortly after 6 o'clock. Vanessa's parents came with 2 of her aunts and several close relatives. Her mother, Mrs. Cole, wore an expensive blue gown and carried herself proudly. Her father, Mr. Cole, was a quiet man who had spent years hiding the financial problems in her family. They were not as wealthy as Vanessa had made Adrian believe, but they dressed carefully and spoke as if they belonged among the richest people in the country. Leo arrived a little later in a new suit. He looked nervous because the men he owed money had continued threatening him, but Vanessa had assured him that everything would be solved after the wedding. "Do not look worried tonight," she whispered when she pulled him aside. "Adrian must not suspect anything." Leo forced his smile. "When will you get the money?" "Be patient," Vanessa replied. "After tonight, his mother will trust me completely. Then everything will become easier." Madame Beatrice's relatives arrived next, including her younger sister, 2 cousins, and an elderly uncle who had known Adrian since childhood. They were surprised that Madame Beatrice had not yet appeared, but Adrian explained that she was on her way. The guests gathered in the living room, where soft music played in the background. The white flowers and gold decorations made the mansion look ready for a wedding celebration. Vanessa moved from one guest to another, greeting everyone respectfully. She bent slightly when she welcomed Madame Beatrice's elderly uncle and offered him the most comfortable chair. She asked the workers to serve drinks and smiled warmly whenever anyone praised the house. Adrian watched her with pride. Every kind action seemed to confirm that his mother had been wrong about her. When Mrs. Helen entered carrying a tray, Vanessa smiled at her in front of the guests. "Mrs. Helen, please make sure all the workers have eaten," she said loudly. "They have been working hard today." Mrs. Helen looked at her for a moment before replying, "Yes, Miss Vanessa." Adrian smiled. "That is thoughtful of you." Vanessa touched his arm. "They are not only workers, they are part of the home." Ruth, who was standing near the dining room door, almost looked away in disgust. She remembered how Vanessa had refused to allow Auntie Grace to eat until late at night, and how she had forced the elderly woman to wash heavy curtains with injured hands. However, Ruth remained silent because Mrs. Helen had told her the truth would come out that evening. After the guests had settled, Vanessa stood near the center of the room and welcomed both families. "I am very happy that everyone is here," she said. "In 1 week, Adrian and I will become husband and wife. I know marriage does not join only 2 people. It joins 2 families. I promise that I will respect this family and protect everything that matters to Adrian." Several guests smiled and nodded. Mrs. Cole looked proudly at her daughter. Vanessa continued speaking. "After the wedding, I also plan to start a charity for poor widows and elderly women who have no one to support them. I believe we should never forget people who are struggling." Madame Beatrice's sister glanced at Adrian with approval. "She speaks well," she whispered. Adrian nodded. "She has a kind heart." Mrs. Helen heard his words and felt sorry for him. Vanessa had lied so perfectly that he still could not see the woman behind the smile. As Vanessa continued speaking about compassion and charity, a quiet sound came from the main entrance. The door slowly opened and Auntie Grace stepped inside. She wore the same faded gown, old sandals, large glasses and worn headscarf. Her shoulders were bent and she held the old cloth bag against her body. At first, only Ruth and Mrs. Helen noticed. Ruth's eyes widened while Mrs. Helen remained calm. Then Vanessa turned towards the entrance. Her smile disappeared from her face so quickly that several guests noticed the change. Her body became stiff and her eyes filled with anger. "What are you doing here?" she shouted. The room became silent. Adrian looked from Vanessa to the elderly woman. "Who is she?" one of the relatives asked. Vanessa walked quickly toward Auntie Grace. "I told you never to return to this house." Auntie Grace stood quietly near the door. "Good evening, madam," she said softly. "Do not greet me," Vanessa snapped. "Who allowed you inside?" Mrs. Helen stepped forward. "She said she came to speak to the family." Vanessa turned on her. "And you allowed her to enter during an important dinner?" "I believed she had something important to say," Mrs. Helen replied. Vanessa looked back at Auntie Grace with hatred. "You have nothing to say here. Leave immediately." Adrian stood from the sofa. "Vanessa, calm down. Is this the maid you told me about?" Vanessa's expression changed slightly when she remembered the guests were watching. However, the sight of Auntie Grace made her too angry to continue pretending. "Yes," she answered. "This is the woman who stole my bracelet." Auntie Grace shook her head. "I did not steal it." "You are still lying," Vanessa said. "The bracelet was found inside your bag." Adrian moved closer. "Vanessa told me she decided not to press charges. Why have you returned?" Auntie Grace looked at him through the large glasses. Hearing her son speak to her without recognizing her caused pain in her heart, but she remained in character. "I came because the truth has not been told, sir." Vanessa laughed bitterly. "What truth? You entered this house as a maid, stole expensive jewelry, and now want to disturb our family dinner?" One of Vanessa's aunts looked at the elderly woman with disgust. "Security should remove her." Madame Beatrice's elderly uncle raised one hand. "Let the woman speak. She came here alone. We should at least hear her." Vanessa turned towards him with a forced smile. "Sir, there is nothing to hear. She is a thief who is looking for money." Auntie Grace looked at Adrian. "Please, sir, allow me to explain." Adrian saw fear and sadness on the elderly woman's face. He did not understand why, but something about her voice touched him. "Let her speak." Vanessa stared at him. "Vanessa, this woman nearly ruined the wedding preparations. She is already here. Let us hear what she has to say." Vanessa became more angry. "No! Poor people like her are very clever. They create stories and cry until someone gives them money. If you allow her to speak, she will lie about me." Several guests exchanged uncomfortable looks. Only a few minutes earlier, Vanessa had been speaking about helping poor widows, and now she was insulting an elderly woman in front of everyone. Adrian noticed the difference. "Vanessa, you just told us you wanted to help poor widows." Vanessa looked trapped for a moment. "I want to help honest people, not thieves." Auntie Grace stepped farther into the room. "I did not come to ask for money." "Then why are you here?" Vanessa demanded. "I came for justice." Vanessa laughed bitterly. "Justice? Do you think you can enter a billionaire's home and threaten his family?" Auntie Grace's hand tightened around the old bag. "I worked in this house. I washed your curtains, cleaned your rooms, and carried your heavy boxes. I served you and your friends. I did everything you asked me to do." "And you are paid," Vanessa replied. "You should be grateful that I gave you work." "I ordered you to wash heavy curtains alone when my hands were already painful," Auntie Grace continued. "You poured dirty water on a place I had already cleaned and forced me to scrub it again. You stopped the other workers from helping me." Vanessa's mother looked at her daughter with surprise. "Vanessa, is that true?" Vanessa shook her head. "She is lying. This woman was lazy. I only asked her to do the job she was employed to do." Ruth could no longer remain silent. "She is telling the truth," she said from the side of the room. Vanessa turned sharply. "Nobody asked me." Ruth became frightened, but she continued. "Auntie Grace worked more than everyone else. She hardly rested." Vanessa pointed at the hallway. "Leave this room before I dismiss you." Adrian looked at Vanessa with confusion. "Why are you threatening her for speaking?" "Because the workers are joining together to embarrass me," Vanessa replied. She faced Auntie Grace again. "Get out before I call the guards." "I also served you and your friends in this living room," Auntie Grace said. "A glass slipped from my hand and broke." Vanessa's face became tense. What about it? You ordered me to kneel and pick up the broken pieces with my bare hands. A quiet shock moved through the room. Madame Beatrice's sister looked at Adrian, while Mrs. Cole looked at Vanessa. You did what? Mrs. Cole asked. She is changing the story, Vanessa said quickly. She carelessly broke an expensive glass. I told her to clean it. That is all. Anita, one of Vanessa's friends, who had been invited to the dinner, was seated near the back of the room. She looked down because she remembered the incident. Madame Beatrice's elderly uncle noticed her discomfort. Young lady, were you there? He asked. Anita slowly raised her head. Vanessa gave her a warning look, but Anita had already carried the guilt for too long. Yes, sir, she answered. Vanessa ordered the woman to pick up the glass with her hands. I gave her a dustpan because one piece had already cut her finger. Vanessa stared at her. Anita, how can you take the side of a thief? Anita looked ashamed. I am only saying what happened. Adrian turned to Vanessa. You told me you treated her wound and allowed her to rest. Vanessa's eyes moved quickly around the room. I was under pressure that day. Perhaps I spoke harshly, but she was careless. Auntie Grace lifted one hand. The small scar from the cut was still visible. Mrs. Helen treated the wound. You did not ask whether I was hurt. Vanessa's father cleared his throat nervously. Vanessa, you should apologize to the woman and allow her to leave. There is no need to make this matter bigger. Vanessa became frustrated. Why should I apologize to someone who stole from me? Auntie Grace looked directly at her. Because you know I did not steal the bracelet. Vanessa stepped closer. Be careful with your words. You placed it in my bag. Gasps filled the room. Leo's face lost its color. Adrian's eyes widened. What is she talking about? He asked. Vanessa pointed at the elderly woman. She is mad. She is trying to destroy me because I dismissed her. Auntie Grace remained calm. You entered my room while the workers were eating. You hid the bracelet beneath my clothes. Then you ordered the guards to search everyone. Vanessa's voice rose. Liar! She moved forward as though she wanted to strike Auntie Grace again, but Adrian quickly stepped between them. Enough, he said firmly. No one will touch her. Vanessa looked at him in shock. You are protecting a thief instead of your future wife? I am asking for the truth, Adrian replied. Mrs. Helen, what happened at the police station? Mrs. Helen looked towards Auntie Grace, who gave her a slight nod. The police saw a security recording, Mrs. Helen said. It showed Miss Vanessa entering Auntie Grace's room and opening her bag. Adrian slowly turned towards Vanessa. You told me the police released her because you decided not to press charges. Vanessa's lips trembled. That is what happened. Mrs. Helen shook her head. No, sir. The police released her because the footage showed she had been framed. Adrian stared at Vanessa as if he had never seen her before. Why did you lie to me? Because the recording was false, Vanessa answered quickly. Mrs. Helen and the old woman planned everything. Auntie Grace took one slow step forward. You still believe you can lie your way out of every situation. Vanessa looked at her with hatred. You are only a poor maid. Do you think anyone here will believe you instead of me? Vanessa, Adrian warned. She ignored him and continued. People like you are never satisfied. I gave you a place to sleep and food to eat, but you still wanted more. Poor servants are always dishonest. They enter wealthy homes and begin to dream about things that do not belong to them. Adrian looked deeply troubled. Madame Beatrice's relatives stared at Vanessa in disbelief. Her own parents became uncomfortable, but she was too angry to notice. You should never have been allowed near this family. You belong outside with people like yourself. Auntie Grace stood silently for a moment. Then she placed the old cloth bag on the floor. Her voice became stronger. Is that truly what you believe? Vanessa folded her arms. Yes, now leave before I have you thrown outside. Auntie Grace slowly removed the large glasses from her face. Vanessa watched with confusion. The elderly woman then raised both hands, untied the worn headscarf, and removed the rough wig. She straightened her bent shoulders and stood tall. A soft cry escaped from Madame Beatrice's sister. Adrian stared at the woman in front of him, but he still looked uncertain because of the makeup on her face. Auntie Grace took a clean cloth from her bag and wiped away the dark marks and artificial lines around her cheeks and forehead. As her familiar face appeared, the room became completely silent. Adrian's mouth opened, but no words came out. Vanessa stepped backward, her face turned pale. "Mother?" Adrian finally whispered. Madame Beatrice removed the rest of the makeup and looked at her son. Tears filled her eyes. "Yes, Adrian, it is me." Adrian stared at the faded gown, old sandals, and injured hand. He looked as though the floor had disappeared beneath him. "You were Auntie Grace?" he asked. Madame Beatrice nodded. Vanessa's body began to shake. "No," she whispered. "This cannot be true." Madame Beatrice turned towards her. "You never looked closely at the people who served you. That is why you did not recognize me." Vanessa moved her lips, but no sound came out. Mrs. Cole stood from her seat. "Vanessa, what is happening?" Vanessa shook her head quickly. "This is a trap. She planned everything because she never wanted me to marry Adrian." Madame Beatrice looked at her calmly. "I disguised myself because every time I warned Adrian, you denied your behavior and turned yourself into the victim. I wanted to see how you treated people when you believed no important person was watching." Adrian lowered himself slowly onto the sofa. His face was filled with pain. "Mother, why did you not tell me?" "I tried to warn you after the charity event. You believed Vanessa's explanation. I knew another warning would only push you farther away from me. I needed you to see the truth." Adrian looked at Vanessa. "Did you know my mother was the maid?" "No," Vanessa answered quickly. "I swear I did not know." "That does not make it better," Madame Beatrice said. "You believed I was a poor widow, and that is why you treated me badly." Vanessa began to cry. "I was under pressure. The wedding plans were too much. I lost my temper sometimes." Madame Beatrice shook her head. "This was not one moment of anger. You made me wake up before everyone. You forced me to wash heavy curtains alone. You ordered me to scrub the compound under the sun, carry heavy boxes upstairs, and repeat work that had already been completed. When the other workers tried to help me, you stopped them." Ruth and Clara nodded silently. Madame Beatrice continued. "During Adrian's video calls, you placed your arm around me and pretended to care. The moment the call ended, you pushed me away and returned to your cruelty." Adrian closed his eyes. He remembered every call during which Vanessa had praised herself for caring for the elderly maid. "You told me she was like a mother to you." Vanessa cried harder. "Adrian, please listen to me. I made mistakes, but I love you." Madame Beatrice picked up the old cloth bag and removed a small recording device. "You also spoke freely when you believed I was only a servant who could not understand or challenge me." Vanessa stared at the device. "What did you record?" "The truth," Madame Beatrice replied. Mrs. Helen walked to the computer beside the television. The large screen came on, and the room remained silent as the first recording began to play. Vanessa's voice filled the living room. Everyone heard her laughing with her friends and saying that she would not marry Adrian if he were an ordinary office worker. They heard her describe his money, businesses, houses, and powerful family name as the things she needed. Vanessa covered her mouth. "Turn it off," she whispered. No one obeyed her. The recording continued. Her voice spoke about convincing Adrian to transfer the airport hotel and apartment buildings into her name. Adrian looked at her with deep pain. "You plan to take my properties?" he asked. Vanessa shook her head. "I was joking with my friends." Anita spoke from her seat. "You were not joking. You spoke about it many times." Vanessa looked at her with anger. "You are jealous of me." The recording continued, and Vanessa's voice spoke about sending Madame Beatrice abroad so that she would no longer interfere. Madame Beatrice's sister covered her mouth in shock. Adrian looked towards his mother and tears entered his eyes. "She wanted to send you away?" he asked. Madame Beatrice nodded sadly. "She called me the only real problem." The recording then played Vanessa's words about poor people being lazy and undeserving of help. Everyone heard her complain that Adrian wasted too much money on workers, sick people, and charity organizations. The workers stood near the hallway listening in silence. Some had tears in their eyes because Adrian's generosity had helped their families many times. Vanessa suddenly rushed towards the computer, but Mrs. Helen stepped in front of it. 2 security officers entered the room from the private hallway and stood nearby. Vanessa stopped. "This recording was made without my permission," she said. "You trapped me." Madame Beatrice looked at her. "I did not force you to say those words." Adrian stood slowly. His face was no longer confused. It was filled with disappointment. "Was any part of that recording false?" he asked. Vanessa looked at him desperately. "I was only talking carelessly. Women say things with their friends that they do not mean." "Did you plan to take my properties?" Adrian asked. "I only wanted security after marriage." "Did you plan to send my mother away?" "I wanted us to have privacy," Vanessa replied. "Did you say poor people were lazy?" "I was angry about how much money you spend." Adrian looked away, as if her answers caused him physical pain. Madame Beatrice signaled to Mrs. Helen, and the television changed from the voice recording to the security footage. The screen showed the staff hallway. Vanessa appeared, looked around, and entered Auntie Grace's room. Everyone watched as she opened the old bag, placed the bracelet beneath the clothes, and left. Mrs. Cole began crying. Mr. Cole lowered his head in shame. Leo stood very still near the wall. Adrian watched the footage without blinking. When it ended, he looked at Vanessa. "You placed the bracelet in my mother's bag." Vanessa immediately moved towards him. "Adrian, I did not know she was your mother." Adrian stepped backwards before she could touch him. "You believed she was an innocent old woman." "She refused to help me," Vanessa said without thinking. The room became silent again. Adrian's eyes narrowed. "Help you with what?" Vanessa realized her mistake and looked at Leo. He shook his head slightly, warning her not to speak. Madame Beatrice answered. "Vanessa and Leo wanted money from your private safe. Leo had gambling debts and Vanessa believed I might know the password because I sometimes cleaned your study. She offered me money to find it. When I refused, she threatened to frame me with stolen jewelry." Adrian turned towards Leo. "Is this true?" Leo looked frightened. "I only came to ask my sister for help." "Did you ask her to steal from my safe?" Adrian demanded. "No," Leo answered quickly. "She is lying." Madame Beatrice looked at Mrs. Helen. The next audio recording began to play. Leo's voice spoke about the money he owed and the dangerous people who were threatening him. Vanessa's voice mentioned Adrian's safe and said she did not know the password. Then everyone heard Vanessa offering Auntie Grace money and threatening to place stolen jewelry inside her bag if she refused. Leo looked towards the door, but one of the security officers stepped in front of it. Adrian stood in silence for a long moment. His hands were shaking. The woman he had loved and trusted had planned to steal from him, remove his mother from his life, and frame an innocent worker. He remembered every time Madame Beatrice had warned him and every time he had defended Vanessa. He felt foolish, angry, and deeply betrayed. Vanessa moved towards him again and fell on her knees. "Adrian, please forgive me," she cried. "I know everything looks terrible, but I truly love you." Adrian gently removed her hands from his jacket. "When did you begin to love me?" Vanessa held the bottom of his jacket. "I approached you because I knew you were wealthy," she admitted through tears. "At first, I wanted the comfortable life you could give me, but after spending time with you, I developed real feelings. I love you now." Adrian gently removed her hands from his jacket. "You do not frame the mother of someone you love." "I did not know she was your mother," Vanessa repeated. "You should not need to know who a person is before treating them like a human being." Adrian replied. His voice was quiet, but the pain inside it filled the room. If she had truly been a poor maid, would her suffering have mattered less? Vanessa continued crying. "I can change. Give me one more chance." Adrian looked at the diamond engagement ring on her finger. Only days earlier, it had represented the future he believed they would share. Now it reminded him of every lie she had told. He slowly held her hand and removed the ring. Vanessa stared in horror. "No, Adrian, please do not do this." He placed the ring on the center table. "The wedding is cancelled." Vanessa shook her head wildly. "You cannot cancel everything because of one mistake." Madame Beatrice looked at her in disbelief. One mistake? You insulted workers, abused an elderly woman, planned to steal money, planted jewelry in an innocent person's bag, lied to the police, and deceived Adrian for months. Vanessa stood from the floor. Her tears suddenly stopped and anger entered her eyes. You planned all of this because you hated me from the beginning, she said to Madame Beatrice. You disguised yourself, recorded private conversations, and brought everyone here to humiliate me. Madame Beatrice remained calm. I gave you many chances to show kindness. You chose cruelty every time. Vanessa pointed at her. You destroyed my future. You destroyed it yourself, Madame Beatrice replied. Vanessa turned towards Adrian. Are you truly choosing your mother over me? Adrian looked at her sadly. This is not about choosing between two women. This is about discovering the person I wanted to marry is dishonest and cruel. Vanessa's face twisted with anger. You will regret this. All of you will regret embarrassing me. Her father quickly stood and moved towards her. Vanessa, stop speaking, he warned. Let us leave before you make things worse. Vanessa pushed her hand away. I will not leave quietly after they have disgraced me. At that moment, the main door opened and 3 police officers entered with Madame Beatrice's lawyer. The room became tense. Vanessa stepped backwards. Why are the police here? Madame Beatrice looked at her. Because the matter at the station was not finished. I reported the false accusation, the assault, and the attempt to frame an innocent person. The lead officer approached Vanessa. Ms. Vanessa Cole, we need you to come with us for questioning regarding false information given to the police, evidence of attempted theft, and the planting of stolen property. Vanessa looked at Adrian desperately. You will allow them to arrest me? Adrian's face showed pain, but he did not move. You must answer for what you did. The officers also turned towards Leo. Mr. Leo Cole, you are required to come with us regarding the plan to take money from Mr. Williams' safe and other financial complaints. Leo immediately shook his head. I did not steal anything. You can explain at the station, the officer replied. Mrs. Cole began to cry loudly. Please, Madame Beatrice, forgive my children. Do not let the police take them. Madame Beatrice looked at her with sadness. I am sorry for your pain, but Vanessa tried to send an innocent woman to prison. Actions have consequences. The police led Vanessa and Leo from the mansion. Vanessa continued looking back at Adrian, hoping he would stop them, but he stood silently beside his mother. Her parents followed the officers, ashamed and frightened. The other relatives left slowly, whispering about what they had witnessed. When the doors finally closed, the mansion became quiet. The white flowers, gold decorations, and prepared dining table now looked painful because they had been arranged for a celebration that would never happen. Adrian stood near the center of the living room with his head lowered. Madame Beatrice approached him carefully. My son, she said. Adrian stepped away from her. The movement hurt her, but she understood his emotions. How long did you know? He asked. I became fully certain after I entered the mansion as Auntie Grace, she answered. Why did you allow it to continue? His voice broke. Why did you allow her to slap you and send you to the police? Because every time I warned you, you defended her, Madame Beatrice said gently. I was afraid she would convince you that I was trying to control your life. Adrian covered his face with both hands. I called her kind. I praised her for caring for you while she was making you suffer. Tears rolled down his cheeks. I ignored you. Madame Beatrice moved closer. You loved her. You believed the person she pretended to be. Adrian lowered his hands. I should have seen it. Do not punish yourself for another person's dishonesty, she told him. A good heart does not always expect evil from others. Adrian looked at the red mark that was still faintly visible on his mother's hand. She hurt me because of me. She hurt me because of who she chose to be, Madame Beatrice replied. Adrian finally stepped forward and embraced his mother. He held her tightly and cried against her shoulder. I am sorry, mother. I am so sorry. Madame Beatrice held him with tears in her own eyes. You are my son. I did what I had to do to protect you. The workers stood quietly near the hallway. Adrian released his mother and turned towards them. Shame covered his face. I also failed all of you, he said. You suffered in my house while I was away, and I believed Vanessa's lies. Mrs. Helen stepped forward. Sir, you did not know. But I should have created a way for you to tell me without fear, Adrian replied. He looked at Ruth and Clara. I am sorry. Ruth wiped tears from her eyes. Thank you, sir. Adrian then looked at his mother. Auntie Grace taught me something I should never forget. Madame Beatrice smiled sadly. She also taught Vanessa something, though she refused to learn. The wedding was officially cancelled the following morning. The decorations were removed, the guests were informed, and the wedding company returned the items that could be returned. News of the broken engagement spread quickly, but Adrian refused to speak publicly about the details. He did not want revenge or attention. He wanted time to understand what had happened. The investigation continued. The security footage and recordings proved that Vanessa had framed Auntie Grace and lied during the first complaint. The investigation also revealed that Vanessa had secretly gained access to one of Adrian's smaller financial accounts and transferred money to Leo on different occasions. She had used Adrian's trust to collect private information and approve payments without his knowledge. Leo's gambling debts were confirmed, and several messages showed that he had pressured Vanessa to find more money. Both siblings faced serious legal consequences. Vanessa's parents visited Madame Beatrice and begged her to withdraw the case. Madame Beatrice listened respectfully, but she refused to hide the truth. She explained that forgiveness did not mean protecting someone from the results of a serious crime. Vanessa needed to understand that poor and powerless people also deserve justice. For several weeks, Adrian avoided public events and spent most of his time between his office and his mother's mansion. The betrayal affected him deeply. He struggled to sleep and often remembered Vanessa's false smiles. He questioned every good memory they had shared and wondered which moments had been real. One evening, he sat with Madame Beatrice in her garden as the sun disappeared behind the trees. I do not think I can trust anyone again, he said. Madame Beatrice looked at him carefully. Do not allow one dishonest person to close your heart forever. How will I know who is genuine? He asked. You cannot always know immediately, she replied. That is why trust should grow slowly. Watch how people treat those who cannot help them. Watch how they behave when they are angry and when no one important is watching. Adrian nodded slowly. I defended her because I thought love meant believing everything she said. Love needs trust, but true love does not ask a person to ignore clear signs of dishonesty. Adrian remained quiet for a while. I am sorry I made you feel that your concern was jealousy. Madame Beatrice placed her hand over his. I forgave you before you asked. Adrian returned to work gradually. One of his first decisions was to improve the treatment of workers in every family business and home. He increased the salaries of the mansion staff and paid them extra money for the hardship they had suffered during his absence. Ruth and Clara received special support for their families, while Mrs. Helen was promoted and given more authority over household decisions. Adrian also created a private reporting system that allowed workers to report abuse, threats, or unfair treatment directly to an independent office. No worker would have to fear dismissal for speaking the truth. He met with the mansion staff and addressed them personally. No one should ever feel powerless in a place where they work, he told them. Your jobs do not make you less important than anyone else. Madame Beatrice watched him with pride. The painful experience had wounded him, but it had also made him more careful and compassionate. Several months passed before Adrian began attending charity events again. One of the hospitals supported by the Williams Foundation was a small but busy medical center that treated poor children, elderly, and patients who could not afford expensive care. During an inspection visit, Adrian met Dr. Naomi Daniels. Naomi was a hard-working doctor in her early 30s. She came from a modest family and studied medicine through scholarships and years of sacrifice. She was beautiful, but she did not pay much attention to expensive clothes or social status. She wore a simple white coat, comfortable shoes, and very little makeup. When Adrian first arrived at the hospital, several workers became nervous because they knew he was the major donor. Naomi, however, was focused on a sick child who was struggling to breathe. She did not leave the patient to welcome him. Adrian waited outside the treatment room until she finished. When Naomi finally came out, she apologized for keeping him waiting. The patient needed urgent attention, she explained. Adrian smiled. You did the right thing. The patient was more important than my visit. Naomi looked relieved. She showed him around the hospital and explained what the doctors needed. She did not flatter him or speak unnecessarily about his wealth. She clearly described the shortage of medicine, old equipment, and the number of poor patients who needed help. Adrian respected her honesty. Over the following months, he visited the hospital more often to supervise the improvements funded by the foundation. Naomi treated him politely, but she never behaved differently because he was a billionaire. She spoke to cleaners with the same respect she showed senior doctors. When a nervous young nurse made a mistake, Naomi corrected her calmly instead of embarrassing her. She carried boxes when workers needed help and sometimes bought food for patients with her own money. Adrian noticed these things without speaking about them. At first, their relationship remained professional. Naomi knew about his cancelled wedding because it had been reported in the news, but she never asked him private questions. She allowed him to speak whenever he felt comfortable. One afternoon, after a long hospital meeting, they sat outside near a small garden. Adrian told her a little about the betrayal and how difficult it had become for him to trust people. Naomi listened without judging him. Not everyone who enters a person's life comes with a good heart, she said. But one bad experience should not make kindness look foolish. Her words reminded Adrian of his mother. Their friendship slowly became stronger. Naomi sometimes called to update him about a patient the foundation had helped. Adrian began speaking to her about his work, his late father, and the pressure of carrying the family name. Naomi also shared stories about her childhood and the sacrifices her mother had made to educate her. Adrian admired her strength, but when he finally asked whether they could spend time together outside the hospital, Naomi hesitated. "Your world is very different from mine," she said. "I do not want people to believe I became close to you because of your money." Adrian understood her fear. "We can remain friends until you are comfortable," he replied. He did not pressure her. His patience made Naomi trust him more. Madame Beatrice met Naomi several times during foundation meetings. She did not test her with tricks or disguises. Instead, she quietly observed the way Naomi treated everyone around her. Naomi greeted drivers, remembered the names of cleaners, and listened when elderly patients spoke slowly. She did not become overly sweet in Madame Beatrice's presence or try to impress her with expensive gifts. She was simply respectful and sincere. One rainy evening, Madame Beatrice visited the hospital after a meeting. Most workers had left, but Naomi was still inside. An elderly woman had been brought to the hospital after being found weak and confused near a bus stop. She had no family with her and no money. Madame Beatrice stood outside the room and watched Naomi gently feed the woman. She cleaned the dirt from her hands, changed her into fresh clothes, and covered her with a warm blanket. "You should go home and rest," another nurse told her. "Your shift ended 2 hours ago." Naomi shook her head. "She is frightened. I will remain until she sleeps." "No one will pay you for the extra time," the nurse replied. Naomi smiled. "Not everything needs payment." Madame Beatrice felt tears gather in her eyes. Naomi did not know she was being watched. There were no cameras, wealthy donors, or important guests inside the room. Her kindness was real because it appeared when no reward was waiting. Later, Madame Beatrice spoke to Adrian. "Naomi has a good heart," she said. Adrian smiled. "I know." "Do you love her?" Madame Beatrice asked. Adrian looked thoughtful. "I am beginning to, but I do not want to rush her or myself." "That is wise," his mother replied. Adrian and Naomi allowed their relationship to grow slowly. They spent time talking, working on hospital projects, and visiting patients supported by the foundation. Naomi met the mansion workers and treated them warmly. Ruth was surprised when Naomi entered the kitchen one afternoon and helped carry cups to the dining room. "Doctor, please leave that. It is my work." Naomi smiled. "Helping you does not remove your job from you." Madame Beatrice heard the conversation and quietly smiled. 2 years after the night Vanessa was exposed, Adrian asked Naomi to marry him. He did not organize a crowded public event or invite cameras. He took her to the small garden near the hospital where they first spoke honestly about their lives. Naomi accepted with tears of happiness. Their wedding was simple but beautiful. The families, hospital workers, mansion staff, and close friends attended. There were no unnecessary displays of wealth. Adrian wanted the day to be about love, family, and gratitude. Ruth and Clara were among the guests, while Mrs. Helen sat close to Madame Beatrice. Naomi wore an elegant white gown and walked towards Adrian with a peaceful smile. Madame Beatrice watched her son and felt that the pain of the past had finally made room for a better future. During the reception, Madame Beatrice stood to give a short speech. She looked at Naomi and smiled. "There is something you may not know," she said. "I once entered Adrian's mansion dressed as a poor maid." Naomi laughed softly because Adrian had already told her part of the story. "I heard you were called Auntie Grace," she replied. The guests smiled. Madame Beatrice nodded. "I used the disguise to discover whether someone's kindness was real. I am happy I never needed to test you that way." Naomi walked closer and held her hands. "Even if you had truly been a maid, I would still have respected you. A person's clothes and job do not change the value of their life." Madame Beatrice's eyes filled with tears. She embraced Naomi as Adrian watched with happiness. The workers clapped and the room filled with laughter. Later that evening, Madame Beatrice stood quietly near the edge of the reception hall and watched Adrian dance with his new wife. She remembered the broken glass, the heavy curtains, the slap, and the cold police station. She also remembered Adrian's pain when the truth had been revealed. Those memories would never disappear completely, but they had taught the family an important lesson. Wealth could buy a large mansion, expensive clothes, powerful connections, and a comfortable life, but it could not buy honesty, compassion, or a good heart. A person's true character was not shown by the way they treated billionaires, business owners, or important guests. It was shown by the way they treated cleaners, drivers, waiters, servants, poor people, and anyone who seemed unable to reward them. As Madame Beatrice watched Adrian and Naomi smiling at each other, she felt peace return fully to her heart. Her son had not only found a wife who loved him without greed, he had found a woman who respected every human being. Madame Beatrice smiled through her tears, grateful that the painful disguise had protected Adrian from a terrible marriage and led him to a life built on truth, kindness, and genuine love. The story teaches that a person's true character is seen in how they treat people who seem poor, weak, or unable to help them. Wealth and beauty can hide bad intentions, but honesty, kindness, and respect always reveal a good heart. We should never ignore warning signs in relationships, and we should treat everyone with dignity because no human being is less important than another. Thanks for watching this amazing story on African Stories by V. If you liked it and felt inspired, please show your support by clicking the like button, sharing with your friends, and leaving a comment below. To see more interesting stories and learn about different cultures, subscribe to African Stories by V. And don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Your support means a lot and helps us bring more stories to you. Until we meet again, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep smiling.